This evening. It is November 12th, 2024. This is our 7 o'clock meeting, and we will begin by indicating who is here. Julie, go ahead.
Julie Jackson, Kim Chandler,
Connie Burgess,
Chris Wynn, Karen Winder,
Clark Nelson,
Todd Huber.
And Nicole McDermott. Superintendent Horsley will be joining us in just a moment. We're going to start by welcoming and having introductions. First, we'd like to recognize PTA. Did I see PTA here? Oh, right in the front.
I'm Liz Shellum. I am the Region 5 Advocacy VP.
Thank you. Welcome. We're thrilled to have you. GEA. You don't have to stand, Michelle.
We can stand up. We're good. My doctor told me it was good for me. I'm Michelle Jones, GEA President.
I'm Chantel Diaz, the Vice President.
Kelly Foot, Board Member. Karen Burns, I represent Grant on the UEA Board of Directors.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Granite Office Professionals.
Dana Breeze, President.
Monica Jobar, Historian.
Thanks for being here. GESPA.
I'm Breezy, I'm the President. Riley Ogden, I'm the Secretary Treasurer.
Thanks for being here, you guys. Middle managers? No middle managers. Administrators, principals? Granite Education Foundation. I know we saw Kathy. Thanks for being here. Oh, but you're... Well, thank you for filling both roles. And then I did not see any elected officials, but if there is anybody hiding there, please let me know right now. Okay. All right. We're
Principals, right?
principals, yeah.
Our principals here.
Principals, will you stand and be recognized? Oh. And vice principals, I should say too. Okay. Thank you for being here. We are going to go ahead and have a Pledge of Allegiance. We're going to invite Steve Patron up to come and lead us in our pledge. He's one of our directors.
Can I have everyone please stand? Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and we are going to turn the time over to Luke to introduce. Dan Johnson. Oh, Jen. I was like, who's Dan? Jen, come on up. Almost didn't recognize you with your hair different color.
The things I do for my students at Hunter High, right?
They love you for it.
All right, good evening, board. Thank you so much for having us here. I'm Jen Johnson. I'm the principal at Hunter High School. And tonight, our incredibly talented students will be sharing a performance. Our theater productions are under the direction of Charity Parks and Barry Ricks. The Music Man will be running November 21st and 22nd at 7 p.m., November 23rd at 2 o'clock with a sensory-friendly matinee, and again that evening at 7. Closing night will be Monday, November 25th at 7 o'clock. Please join us at Hunter High for spectacular performances in our incredible theater program. And now, ladies and gentlemen, step right up and lend an ear, for tonight we have a treat that will make your spirits soar. From the fine folks at Hunter High School, hailing straight from their sensational production of The Music Man, we present to you a quartet of young gents who are ready to dazzle with song. Please welcome, in no particular order, the talented Zach Gerber, the dynamic Evan Dent, the marvelous Jaden Nelson, and the one and only Joseph Argotti. These young voices will be filling the air with a melody that will have you tapping your feet and humming along.
Thank you so much, Hunter High School. I think that just left us wanting more, so we're excited to maybe go and see that show. We appreciate the hard work that they do. We're going to move on to our Good News Minute. So when Julie is ready, we're going to start with you.
I would like to pass today.
Okay.
I just have too many things on my mind. I can't think of what has happened this month.
Well, this month, there's been a lot going on. Another legislator in the classroom visit over at Armstrong, more packed meetings, thank you Thursdays, meeting with teachers and administrators affected by potential PAC recommendations. It's been a busy month. In particular, I want to say thank you to Wright Elementary for allowing me to come in and observe their special education classes this past month and experience how things are going there. Big thanks to all who have taken time to share feedback with me in these various scenarios this past month. Most importantly, though, I wanted to acknowledge Veterans Day yesterday. I was able to attend the annual Veterans Day concert at the Tabernacle downtown, and the Utah National Guard, 23rd Army Band, and the Granite High School choirs did a wonderful job. Wonderful concert, and they do that obviously to recognize and respect our veterans across the board. So it was really fun to be there. And I want to personally thank all the men, women, and families who have sacrificed on unimaginable levels to serve in the armed forces of this country. You deserve our respect and our appreciation and our very best efforts in building the best country possible as an acknowledgement of and a display of appreciation for your sacrifices. Thank you.
Amen to what Kim just said about the veterans. We've gone to that concert for years, and it is very special. But my good news is thank you to the musicals that are coming. I was able to see Taylorsville, Hello Dolly, and the music was wonderful. The singers had they were right in with it, and the orchestra did really well this year. And so I just want to encourage everyone that can to go to their high school musicals. They're well worth it.
Okay, I just want to thank Hillside Elementary. They did a month of kindness in October, and they focused on bully prevention. And they did such a good job, and their principal rewarded them with a carnival, and she invited me to come. And I think the highlight was I got to ride the small train, and it was fantastic. And it was also fantastic that those older kids even enjoyed that celebration. It was so fun to see that they had such a good kindness outreach for that whole school. So I appreciate that. I got to go to the Day of the Dead celebration at Lake Ridge Elementary. It was the first time they had done that. It was fantastic. They invited Cypress High to come dance and Jefferson Junior Mariachi Band to perform. It was well attended. It was great for those families, and it was well thought out. Last Veterans Day, I went to Pleasant Green Elementary to have each grade did a different song. My granddaughter told me, Grandma, you got to watch this because you might not know this song. And I said, okay. And she sang, Oh, Beautiful for Spacious Skies, and it was adorable. And so I just appreciate I know so many of our schools did a veterans, some kind of tribute or performance. And I just appreciate all the veterans. We have some serving in our schools as employees, and we also have many that relatives, family members that serve. And all my heart goes out to those families who have sacrificed so much for us. So that's my good news. Thanks. Karen.
Yeah, I echo those sentiments about Veterans Day. We love our veterans. My good news minute is I want to give a shout out to my Valley Ligers. They are the most improved attendance across the district, and attendance has been a real big issue there. And so I am so proud of their efforts, specifically targeting getting kids in the classroom in their seats where they learn best.
It's such good news.
I know, right? That's why it's Good News Minute. It qualifies. I also had the opportunity, I was invited to Granger, the Lady Lancers tennis banquet. And I enjoyed food from Africa and South America and Asia. And they have the most diverse tennis team in the district. And it was so fun because everyone is just friends with each other. And so I just wanted to give a kind of a shout out for the Lady Lancers that are on the tennis. And that was super fun and opened my eyes to really how diverse our Granger community is. And I love it. I also had the opportunity to attend the Super CCA Day. This is the college career, what does the A stand for? Anyway, college career things. So they had this at Olympus High, and they have like firefighters and they have chefs and basically like the pathways that line up with our GTI. And it was so fun to walk into every classroom, and you could smell the garlic for 3 halls away from the chef's room. But it was so fun to see our kids there in each classroom, and they're learning about IT from a professional IT guy that's teaching them all the careers that they could have in that field. And then you go down the hall and it's chefs, and then you go upstairs and it's, health sciences, and do you want to be a nurse, do you want to be a doctor, do you want to be a CNA? And it was just, it really opened my eyes to the broad opportunities we provide to our kiddos, because some might be more college bound and others might need pathways, and either way, we just want them to go on with their education. I've heard from a lot of teachers thanking the board for their day after Halloween non-attendance day from students.
And that it was the day after Halloween.
Day after Halloween, to not have to deal with the sugar high as it comes off. So it was fun to hear thank you. We don't hear that a lot. Last, I just want to give a shout out to Mr. Broshinsky, who is the Granger High Choir Director. He had the foresight to actually schedule the last Friday morning to take their concert choir and their madrigals to the Harmon Senior Center in West Valley and perform their Veterans Day songs. The very same Veterans Day songs they did at the concert last night, they were able to bring right to my community in the heart of West Valley and sing to those. And it was so fun because they all came in their veteran gear. I mean, they had their hats and their flag shirts, and it was so fun to look back and see them singing along and mouthing the words. And so I just wanted to give him a shout out for the foresight to get that scheduled and on the calendar, and to pull the kids out of school for that hour. And I believe it was an hour well spent.
Thanks, Karen.
Thanks. I want to echo the sentiment that's been expressed already about Veterans Day yesterday. I, too, was in attendance last night at the concert that involved our combined concert choirs from all throughout the district, and it was really an honor to be in attendance at that event. Friday evening, I had the chance to attend the Bonneville Junior High production of Madhouse, their fall play. Wonderful production, and more impressive than the turnout was the peers and the other students that were there to support their fellow students, and the way that they reacted and supported them throughout the production. I was very impressed in that regard. Finally, this week, there are several Ruby Bridges walks taking place this coming Thursday morning. And I'm fortunate to be invited to attend many of those. Unfortunately, they all happen at the same exact time. But I will be at Crestview Elementary Thursday morning, and very much looking forward to that event and what it represents in terms of individuals who represent courage and someone that we can admire and strive to look up to and be like for our elementary students. Thanks.
Clark. The hard part about going last is that everybody has said everything. So, I just want to reiterate musicals. I also attended Taylorsville. Fantastic, was blown away, and I'm looking forward to 3 more that I have scheduled on my calendar. I do want to give a shout out and recognition to our cross country team at Taylorsville High School. Got to go celebrate them. They got the first place in state, which is awesome. So excited for them, and for the boys team. The girls team finished really well as well. They finished 11th, so overall just a really great showing, and super proud of them. I loved I got to see the mariachi band that they invited to Jefferson Junior High School, and it's a guest mariachi band that they brought in to perform for them because they have started their own mariachi program there at Jefferson, which is a fantastic program. Just because I have a little bit of experience in this, we were told they started this program down in Clark County a few years ago, and if you have a kid that is in that program, which is very likely with a lot of these performing arts, you have a 95% of that kid getting to graduation, which is a phenomenal thing, and I don't know that you could match that with very many other things happening in our schools. So it's really amazing to see this program grow. I'm thrilled that it's now at 2 of our junior highs, and I know that they are training some of our other teachers at some of our high schools and other junior highs. So I'm looking forward to seeing that grow. Just a note about Veterans Day. I also attended the concert, and it was thrilling to be there. And I just want to take a moment, if any of you here are veterans or are family of those serving, would you please stand and be recognized right now? I want to thank you for your dedication as well. We recognize that those serving obviously dedicate a lot of time and sacrifice, but also that families dedicate that time and sacrifice a lot. So we just want to say thank you. If you missed the concert last night, it was phenomenal, but a huge thank you to what you do. We're going to go ahead and move on with recognitions. I'm going to turn the time over to Erin Whitehead for our All-State recognitions.
Okay, Superintendent Horsley, members of the board, as the following honorees of Academic All-State are announced, we invite them to come to the front and to meet the board and meet the superintendent, and we ask them to stay for a group photo. Afterwards, we kindly ask them to come out to the hall and receive a gift bag, and then great. And so the following: girls tennis, Suni Ivans of Cottonwood; boys cross country, Andrew Polson of Cypress; Andrew Storheim of Olympus; Davis Howe of Skyline; Andrew Crouch of Skyline; Kai Mikowski of Taylorsville; girls cross country, Bryn Polson of Cypress; Lily Shawcroft of Cypress; Paige Meters of Granger; Sophia Jordan of Olympus. The following from football: Carson Stewart of Skyline; Brady West of Skyline. Girls tennis, Charity Christensen of Taylorsville. Now, there are several other recipients who are not in attendance tonight. They will be listed on the board report so they too can be celebrated. Now, to qualify for Academic All-State, student athletes must be a member of a varsity team and have a cumulative grade point average of 4.0. There is also a qualifying index of an SAT score or an ACT score that correlates with the cumulative grade point average. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give these fine students a round of applause. Guys, let's go get your gift.
Speaking of mom, if there's any of those parents that are here, can you also stand and be recognized? We realize that there's a lot of work that goes in on both ends of this. Thanks so much for coming, you guys, and being recognized. That's a lot of work. I hope people recognize what a tremendous amount of work that takes to be an academic All-State. It's amazing. All right. We do not have any elected officials unless somebody snuck in without me seeing. So we're going to go on to our patron participation time. We do have one person signed up, which is Michelle Jones. We'll let her hobble to the microphone, and as she gets there, sorry, Michelle.
It's true. You're fine.
For those of you wondering, she has a pinched sciatica. We feel bad. I'm sorry.
Dear President McDermott, Michelle Jones, 3710 South, 500 East.
also a teacher at Cypress High. Dear President McDermott, Vice President Wynn, members of the board, and Superintendent Horsley, my name is Michelle Jones, and I'm a 9th grade math teacher at Cypress High, as well as president of GEA, the largest teachers union in the state of Utah. It is both an honor and a privilege to stand before you as a representative and advocate for my colleagues across the district. Granite District employs educators in many different roles. One key reason so many of us to choose to work for and stay in this district is because of the consistency and reliability in the policy and practice that Granite is known for. Whether we're navigating HR issues, tackling school closures, boundary changes, refining internal policies, the district and GEA have a long history of coming together to make decisions that attract and retain the high-quality educators our students deserve. This long-standing collaborative relationship and the reciprocal communication between the district and the association have been essential in ensuring the district runs smoothly. Establishing clear protocols, honoring historical agreements, and maintaining reliability are the pillars that have allowed Granite to adapt and thrive amidst an ever-changing landscape of public education. We know these are hard times. We've got to be doing this together. These are the reasons why Granite has been able to serve our communities, students, and families so well for so many years is because of this collaborative relationship. Every year we connect with our communities, inspire our students, and expand opportunities for thousands. We are proud of the work that we do and the impact that we have on our students' lives at all levels. However, in the wake of the recent transition with the new superintendent and chief of staff, without the benefit of the lengthy transition periods that we recognize have been historical practice, we have seen some breakdown in the communication that has traditionally served us so well. I stand before you today to advocate for a recommitment to the values that have long defined our work together: reciprocal, transparent, and timely communication. As a district as diverse as ours, it is critical that we bring the perspectives from all the different vantage points together so that we can engage in meaningful, solution-focused conversations. We are better when we work together. This is most effectively achieved when GSD and GEA honor, trust, and build upon the legacy of the professional agreement, our negotiated outcomes, and the protocols that we have collectively crafted. These agreements have established the framework for a strong, vibrant district where all of us, educators, administrators, district leadership, students, all levels, know the high expectations that we're working for to empower students to achieve their highest potential by fostering a safe, inclusive, and innovative learning environment that inspires lifelong success, critical thinking, and responsible citizenship, a mission that you charged us with. And it's a worthy mission, but that we've got to do it together. We can only achieve the district's mission if we work together. GEA, the educators of Granite School District, are committed to these shared values. We are the historians of this collective work. We treasure and protect the commitments that we've made with the district. I speak publicly today to request that the district reciprocate these same commitments to reestablish and reinforce the collaborative, transparent communication that has always been at the heart of our success. Together, we can ensure that Granite continues to be a district where all students can thrive and all educators are empowered to do their best work. Thank you.
All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to our consent items. Board members have had this.
I think she's part of the.
Is it for the PAC study, the school closure, the boundary studies? Sorry, I apologize. Thank you. No, That's a great question. We will get to you. Anybody who is here for the boundary study, that will actually be a public hearing that will be held in just a moment after we get through our consent stuff. Thank you. All right, we have our consent items. Board members have had these for the last several days and have been able to ask questions. And so with that, I will entertain a motion.
I move to accept the items on the consent agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the items on the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. We're going to move on to our, sorry, I just got off here. We do have a second action item, which is an administrative appointment. Again, we've had this information and have been able to ask questions. So with that, I will entertain a motion for that.
I move that we accept the action item of administrative appointment.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the administrative appointment. Any discussion?
Quick comment. I have some personal connections here, or what in a sense feel like conflicts of interest potentially. I think it's appropriate that I abstain from this vote.
Thank you, Kim. All right, seeing no further comment, we'll go ahead and take a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And one abstention. All right, with that, we're going to turn the time over to John, Mr. Welburn, to introduce our administrative appointment.
Board of Education, Superintendent, and members of ELT, it's my privilege tonight to introduce to you the new principal, well, the person that will be serving as the new principal of Brockbreak Junior High STEM School that will be reopening this upcoming year. Tim Clark, if you could please stand. Tim, you've all met Tim before, but Tim, just to give you a little background, he taught Spanish at Churchill Junior High, and he was an instructional coach at Rolling Meadows Elementary. He has been an assistant principal at Granite Park Junior High and is currently the principal at Gerald Wright Elementary. So congratulations, Tim. Tim, who do you have here with you tonight?
So tonight I brought my number one, my wife. She's here supporting me. Our kids we kicked them out to junior jazz, so that's why they're not here right now. We got to go pick them up now. So.
Okay, great. And just for a point of clarification, he will still be serving as the principal of Gerald Wright for the next month and a half or so. We hope to present a name to you in our January board meeting for a replacement, and we'll be helping with some coverage until then. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have now an information item. This is our student enrollment report. We're going to invite Mr. Steve Hogan up, who is our Director of Planning and Boundaries, to give us our enrollment report for our final enrollment report for 2024.
Board President, Board Superintendent, Superintendency, others, yes, tonight I'm here to present the annual Superintendent Enrollment Report, which is in essence a summary of our current enrollment in comparison to some of our past and even future forecasting. There we go. Again, first we'll see simply a 3-year enrollment snapshot with a glance at some of the individual schools if you have questions about those, and then also a 20-year enrollment summary. So again, you see 22, 23, and 24 in comparison on the bottom there in bold. You can see what we are familiar with now, and that's an unfortunate decline that we've had for several years now. And the 24 enrollment that we've dropped from significantly even in the last year by almost 2,000 students. I will say you're aware of this again, but I'll say for those that are not aware, much of that, probably almost 700 of those students were coming from one new school in our boundary, and we are familiar with those, but just as a point of reference and recognition for one of the reasons for a significant drop to this year. Quickly, you see every school, you see the enrollment compared from one year to the next, from 23 to this past October, just last month. And the variance, or in other words, the difference of obviously anything in red is a drop in green, and most of those are reductions or decreases in enrollment. Those that are greater than 5 or 10% are noted. I'll certainly be glad to try to answer any of those. There are a few that have specific reasons for those drops. For instance, past school closures or boundary adjustments or reconfigurations, but most of them are simply due to the decline that I will remind those that are watching and joining us tonight, and the board is very familiar with, that is not unique to our district. It is not unique to our state. It is, and in a lot of ways, not unique to our country. A declining birth rate is happening throughout the world. We are feeling the effects of that along with some other factors. But as I have conversations in the last several months, especially reaching out to some of my counterparts around the country and some other professionals and demographers, I keep asking the same question and they keep giving me the same answer, and that is I'm looking for someone to tell us it's not just us. And they assure us it is not. And if you follow the local news, the Kim C. Gardner Institute, KSL articles, and so on, that confirmed this unfortunate trend that we're seeing specific to public education, birth rates, open enrollment, and other factors that lead to this decline. This simply, again, is a list of each school. You bet. If you see something that's, I'm going quickly, but I'll go quickly unless someone tells me not to, then I can easily go back. That's what the back button is for. So, should I do a 5 count or move on?
Are these slides available? These are available on our agenda. So those of you who are wishing to look at the slides in more detail, you are welcome to get on and access these through the agenda that we have posted online. Go ahead.
Keep in mind, again, these were October 1 numbers, and they typically do not include all SPED or sometimes other special programming, but generally are regular ed October 1 numbers. So yeah, if you have questions or concerns, or if you believe you see a typo, please reach out and let us know, and we want to know that, and we'll be glad to correct those. Okay, and then simply moving on to junior highs, you can see the overall decline in junior high, save just a couple there. Keep in mind that some of these, again, whether it's reconfiguration or boundary adjustments, feeder pattern adjustments in the last several years, we have a kind of a lag that we're used to after an adjustment that we typically wait to see 2 to 3 years for the dust to settle on the enrollment and what happens in these schools. And then finally, with the high school numbers. I will say what we're starting to see is what we saw mostly in the elementary level the previous 3, 4, 5 years, and that was the decline there. That cohort is now working its way through the secondary schools and the junior highs and the high schools. And when I say that cohort, that group of students that's moving through the system, if you will, are lower. So in other words, larger groups are graduating, smaller groups are coming in from kinder, but those seniors leave, 9th grade comes in, it's a smaller class, and so on. So we're seeing that, and I'll show you in just a second what that looks like more long term. Again, you've seen this graph before. We just simply added 2024, and you can see the unfortunate trend that we have and other districts are seeing at this point. with the current approximate 55,500 enrollment. For context, you can see to the left back to about 68 to 69,000. We've been as high as 70 to 75,000 in the last 25 to 30 years. There are two charts here I want to show. This one's simply a projection from the USB, from the State Board of Education. There is a data group there. You see down there in there where it says CDC. That's not the federal CDC. It's a data committee. Do you remember what it stands for, Todd? Common Data Committee. So this is the committee at the state that puts these numbers out. And in essence, they were saying that the 57,000, now let me make one important note. You'll notice that I just talked about our enrollment being about 55,500 approximately. And this number shows from the state over 57,000. The difference being, there are a lot of students that come from other programs, Granite Connections, the YES program, the YAC program, the Hardvickson, and so on and so on. We have many, many other programs, Home Hospital, that come and go in our district throughout the year. They we typically see around 2,000 of those students a year. And again, some of those are in the juvenile programs. They come in and out. They're here for a few days, a few weeks, a few months. And so, for instance, one of the post-high or transition services, the YES program, the YAC program can see as many as 1,200 come throughout the year, but we may only see 200 to 300 at a single time. So, long story short, you're typically, if you're looking at total enrollment, you're going to see a difference of about 2,000 students from that number to what we consider our traditional regular school enrollment that we use that number most of the time. And again, going back, so that number that I'm referring to is about 55,500 total enrollment with all of those other programs, comings and goings, technically include just over 57,000. The USBE is projecting, again, another 1.8% drop, or just over 1,000 students for October 2025. For a little context, we did hire Davis Demographics several years ago, almost 5 years ago, and their projection then was that it's a 5-year forecast, but they said that we think you will top out, or excuse me, level off at around 55,000 and perhaps remain there. In the last 5 years, variables continue to change, birth rates continue to go down, real estate, economic markets, all of those things play a part, more schools, more charter schools, to the point where the MGT, the draft forecast, so we hired Davis, what used to be Davis is now called MGT, hired them again a few months ago. We don't have the official full report, but the draft report I was able to get specifically for this meeting. The summary says that unfortunately we're looking at continued decline over the next 5 years. Instead of 1.8, they have 2.4 for next year. Now they do use different metrics and different. MGT uses mostly boundaried students, and the state does take into account open enrollment and other factors there. So we have to kind of average these out. But not to bury the lead, but the story here is an unfortunate decline going forward over the next 5 years. Questions?
So Steve, can you go to that next, the former slide? I know that we have not received the entire report. Will they kind of give us a sense of what they think is, how much of that decline is within our influence and how much of it is not?
Yes. Part of the contract we have is at least, my understanding is at least one in-person visit with the board to come in, and you'll be able to ask them questions and go through the details of those kinds of factors. What's in our control? In other words, birth rate is not in our control. There are some things that are certainly not in our control. And I would suggest that most of these probably aren't. We're always looking for ways to control. Part of what we're doing with the PAC is our effort to increase and improve resources and opportunities. Those are in our control. Many are not.
You know, this, board members, I'm mostly addressing you on this. This study really made me think about the fact that education is just like, it's such a huge moment of shifting, right? We're seeing it on our state, on the political level. We're seeing it in every area. We're even seeing it here in our population and demographic, right? And I think it's a really important time for us to kind of reinvent who we are and find out where we're headed, because I think that the next generation of parents are going to want something different of their schools than my generation of parents wanted. And I think it's important for us to go out and find out what that is, because what we don't want to do is end up, if I can just speak about this in business terms, we don't want to end up with a product that is so archaic that no one wants to buy it. If our schools are the product, we got to ask ourselves, well, what kind of product do our parents, and our parents are the ones who are picking where their kids are going to school, what kind of product do they want? And it's a great moment for us to do that, because so much is going to change anyway. We're going to be forced to change. And so what we need to do is we need to make sure that the changes that we're making are intentional, that they're proactive, they're not reacting to the change. They are intentional. And I think what I'm seeing here is the need for a bit of a market evaluation, if you will, to go out and find out from our people, what do you want from your school? And I think it will be different in different school geographic areas. I really do. So I think that we should be prepared to meet individual needs, you know? But I think that the more we talk about this, the more that kind of comes out to me, that we're going to get left behind if we don't intentionally throw ourselves in the lead. And that means taking risks. It means making bad decisions sometimes, you know, and we're all people who are willing to make big decisions. I don't mean risk takers. We're all people who make big decisions. And I think that's a strength of this board, so I think we should utilize that.
Steve, could you go back a couple slides to the junior high? If you look at those high percentages right there in the middle section with Hunter Jr., Jefferson Jr., Kearns Jr., and Kennedy Jr., they all probably have one thing in common, and that is a charter school has recently opened up in that particular area. So you're seeing an abnormal drop in student enrollment to go and participate in a different educational opportunity. So I think that speaks to what you're addressing there, Julie, and I just want to let this board know and the public know that we're committed to meeting our students where they're at and identifying what opportunities exist. And that's why we're looking at a Magnus STEAM option to make sure our parents have options in that particular community, with the reopening of Brockbank, making them that also a STEM school as well. We need to be very flexible and self-reflective, not just about improving instruction and ensuring that our kids are having a quality experience, because I believe they are by and large, but also making sure that, again, as you've indicated, that our parents know it, and that we're meeting those kids and those families where their greatest needs are.
And that we're listening, that we're listeners. Like, that is something that I think that we can do better at. We can do better at listening to our patrons. And I would say so much of the time, I am listening and I'm agreeing, and I still can't make that thing happen. That happens all the time to us, right? But there are things that we could be creative about and that we could make happen, and that will only happen if we're really listening, and a survey isn't going to do it. Another strength of this board is that we're in schools. That's where we hear, and when we listen to our teachers and we listen to our parents, we listen to the people. Now we've got our district leadership is in schools all the time, and I'm already starting to hear them say, have really great insights because they're in the schools all the time. So I think that's kind of the key.
Are there any other questions or comments? It's heartbreaking to see this in some ways. I recognize my daughter was born in 2008, and if you guys think about what happened in 2008, there's a reason why the trend of birth rate went down. She's a junior now, so I can see this happening. But I am hopeful. I know we have committed educators who are there for kids. I know that I celebrate whenever I can that our schools outperform the charters, which I think speaks to the quality of our educators and the commitment that they have to our students. And I appreciate that we do have that to offer. And I'm there with you, Julie. Let's be creative. Let's think about what we can do. So,
Well, and I want to recognize that it's really discouraging to look at these numbers on a day when you have to vote on a school closure anyway, and to know that, like, well, you're going to do that. You're going to be doing this for years to come. I get used to it, and it's not fun, and so it's discouraging. You know, it is discouraging.
I wish my position did not exist, that part.
but we're grateful you exist.
Thank you.
Just, I've been in the district a long time, and so I was here when 2004, and we had a large district with lots of children and lots of schools. And I see the advantage now of having smaller, it breaks my heart because we're in an area that we will be affected also very shortly. But I think as we try to unify a larger area with students, I see the advantages of reaching out and trying to make something else a community rather than this a smaller area. When I got on the board, I said there is no reason why Granite School District can't be the top of everything, that they should be the innovators. They should be the ones throughout the United States that look at our district to see that we have a huge variety, a huge diversity, but we should be the ones that lead out. And I'm so grateful that at the end of my service here, that I can finally see a common board and people that are in the district that want to be that top district, who are bright and want to help all of our educators become better. This is a choice time to be part of Granite School District, and I'm grateful to be here. I'm sorry about the numbers, but we can champion it, and we can do so much better, and I think it will happen. I'm grateful for it.
All right, thank you, Steve. We are going to move on to, you're going to stay right there in the hot seat. We're going to move on to our Population Analysis Committee recommendation. I recognize on the agenda it does list the public hearing first, but we are going to actually have Steve present the recommendation, and then we will have the public hearings on these recommendations. I do want to tell you, if you would like to sign up to be part of that public comment for the recommendations, the public hearing, you can sign up in the hallway. Luke has the sign up right there. please see Luke if you have not had a chance to sign up for that. And we'll move on from there.
Thank you. Again, next item on the agenda. By the way, for the record, my name is Steve Hogan. I'm the Director of Planning and Boundaries and the Chair of the PAC Committee, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But again, Board President, Superintendency, and others, let me just extend greetings and thanks from the PAC overall. Again, the PAC is approximately 30 directors and others from around the district that represents all areas and corners of the district and advocate for their areas very, very strongly, as they should. And they, at the end of these processes, send their thanks for your willingness to take on and make these hard decisions. So as part of this agenda tonight, I'll review the process very, very quickly. We'll look at the overview map, talk about specific schools and the DLI programs, and along the way, look at specific motions. I, of course, have Dr. Dave Gaddy joining me. There are a lot of transportation issues as part of this study. And so I want to jump in and go quickly. Again, as a reminder, this is not only the presentation, but you can always go back and watch the video record of this and pick it apart if you like. But the process, we do have a process. I don't know if it's perfect, but we believe it's very, very good. Our process revolves around two things. State statute gives us deadlines and other benchmarks to hit, and our board policy. Our process is almost a year long. That starts back in February officially with an approval by this board to proceed with certain study areas, and we follow that down to, and I'll show you in just a minute what we've been doing throughout the year, down to tonight, which is potentially a first reading or an initial approval of some of these items, and then next month with a potential final action. I want to just take a second and note, and really this is from the PAC. They really wanted me to emphasize, not just to the board, I think you already know this, but to all those listening and watching tonight, the complexity of this year's study. This is my 11th year, and all studies are difficult. No study is easy. But when I started hitting the highlights, and believe me, these are the highlights, not the details, but the highlights that I want everyone to remember. Approximately 25 schools involved in this study. There are a lot of districts that don't have 25 schools. Brockbank reopening, which is a celebration. I started my career in Granite District at Brockbank in 1997, and I'm so excited. I'm excited to be able to show people that sometimes schools close and sometimes schools do reopen, so it does happen. The New Cypress, that's not really so much a part of the study other than it does change a boundary and transportation issues on the west side, and that impacts people. The reconfiguration that was decided in December of 23 but implemented in fall of 25. We spent a lot of time last year and the last several years on a lot of reconfiguration. It has all been decided but implemented. Boundary changes also decided last December 23, but implemented in 25. We had to keep one eye kind of looking back and remember and know what those changes were, and at the same time make recommendations for this year. Spanish DLI Magnus School and other significant, I should say, DLI changes. DLI has been a major, major part of this study and has been, quite frankly, very difficult to try to come to some reasonable solutions. 3 school closures. 3 school closures. Some people are thrown off by that third, and we'll talk about that in a second, but technically when we refer to an opening of a Magnus school at Valley Crest, that's a closure of a traditional school. Other significant boundary and feeder pattern changes that are being considered, and finally the transportation issues that are becoming more challenging than ever. Anytime we close a school and combine boundaries and make larger boundaries, we oftentimes have more transportation issues. We have more sped options. We have more kinder options. We have a lot of other challenges in the district because we're a large suburban school district with many large roads, busy streets, and other hazards that we have to consider. We want to consider, and alongside the financial resources that we have, which makes a lot of these which makes a lot of these very complex. Those are the highlights that I wanted to pass along, so I'll go quickly. I don't think I will read all of these. These are here for you to look at, but highlights of our patron outreach efforts throughout the year started with the approval from the board. Mass emails and postcards have gone out, school community council and network open house meetings, posters at schools, 2 large public meetings, meeting with city councils throughout the study area, open houses, Q&As with community councils, small groups, large groups, some Spanish-only meetings at some of our schools, other council PTA meetings, and of course, all along the way, we have a website that we update routinely with all of these meetings that are recorded that are on that website and for everyone's consumption. Jumping really to the fall with more large open houses at Granger High and Hunter Junior. Then we really started to get into the meat of a lot of the DLI discussion and question and answer and open houses at those 4 schools, Stansbury, Monroe, Hillsdale, and Valleycrest. Many different surveys, postcards, and emails have gone out, school community council meetings, yard signs, public notice website, and again, all of the updates and info and everything on our website. Even after all of that, and there are more, and like I said, those are highlights, I'm sure, and when I know, because there are some people I've heard from that have said, I didn't know, I didn't understand. We didn't quite understand the impact of some of these changes as they were mentioned in the beginning. I can understand that. I can. It's quite frankly hard sometimes for us in the middle of it to keep up with all of the potential changes and recommendations that are going on, and amongst our busy lives and our patrons and families and trying to keep up with everything, it can be difficult. So I acknowledge that fact from many of our patrons and families and their concerns. This is obviously just the full map showing you that area. These are elementary boundaries, and so there are approximately 20 or so there, but there are other secondary boundaries and feeders that are affected. What I will do is start on the left or the west side, or the left side of this map, and show zoomed in portions. And again, go fairly quickly. I'll try to talk fairly fast. I'm from Tennessee. That means I typically talk slow, but I'll try to speed it up a little bit for everyone here so we're not here all night. The first was a fairly simple recommendation to change a street that was just cut in the last year. This street was originally kind of going straight down one of our boundaries. The street took a little jog about 30 feet to the west, and it changed a boundary for us. We're just recommending that that street or area just be pushed over and remain, or go from Pleasant Green to Lake Ridge. Last we checked, in the beginning of the year, we did have 2 students in this area. I'm sure we'll have more as houses are completed on that street, but right now it's a matter of 1 street, Sinbad Way, we are recommending, that goes from the Pleasant Green to the Lake Ridge boundary. I'm jumping next to the potential orchard closure and boundary adjustments. You can see, of course, on the map near bottom center where orchard is listed. There are, unless you're kind of colorblind like me, there really are 3 different colors there striped to designate boundary adjustments. I'll start on the left or west side of orchard that is in 2 sections. The bottom or southwest portion is proposed currently to move to Copper Hills Elementary School. The top portion or northwest portion is proposed to move to Wright Elementary School. That bottom portion, by the way, as far as numbers of students, approximately 110. Obviously, we know these numbers can change daily. And the top portion to Wright, 75 to 80 students in that area. The east side, almost the east half or right side on the map, is recommended to go to Whittier, between 180 and 200 students in that area. One of the key changes here that we need to keep reemphasizing is, and this goes back to the complexity, this area of orchard has been part of the Hunter Junior boundary or feeder. The left side going to Copper Hills and Wright, let me back up. It has been for a while part of the Hunter Junior. Last December, the board approved with our recommendation that this Orchard become part of the Matheson, go to Matheson Junior High. So what we're saying is this left side to Copper Hills and Wright will continue with that change approved last year. The right side, the area going to Whittier, would go back to, or you could even say remain, because they haven't left yet, but reverse last year's decision that has not been implemented, and those students would remain, therefore, at Hunter Junior. So it doesn't, that part would not change that away. Questions? I can go through, if you want me to, I can go ahead and go through maps, transportation maps quickly. I'm going to defer to Dave as often as I can. He's the transportation expert. But if you look quickly at Whittier, this would be the new Whittier elementary boundary. The areas that are striped there on the bottom left corner and the southwest corner would be considered the busing eligible area. Remember, for those that are not familiar with this, busing eligible means an area 1.5 miles from the school, and that, as a reminder, is not what you do on Google Earth. It's not getting in your car and doing a counter. Dave's pretty good at reciting that. How does that statute read, Dave?
It's defined as where your driveway meets the middle point of the street through the shortest walking distance where you can first step foot on school property.
And sorry, Kim, go ahead.
I have a question on the previous slides, and if you want to finish this one up first, and then.
We go through these three transportation ones and then come back to that.
Okay.
So that's the Whittier. Next one would be Wright, which really is no change or no busing. I will say we, even our GIS guys that we each use, sometimes get caught up and can't keep up with last year's changes and trying to get to this year's changes. That little piece in the middle in white really should be yellow also. That's part of the change that's happening. But in summary, that area south of 3500, which is currently part of Orchard, which we are proposing would go to Wright, is still not bus eligible according to the GIS transportation system. And then finally, similarly on this map, that's my, looks like my granddaughter did that, but I did that red X, just to clarify again on this map that it was an old map that was accidentally used, but that area, again, is going to Wright. But if this is Copper Hills, there's currently no busing or no busing eligible from any of these areas to Copper Hills Elementary School. And this map represents the changes from December of 23 and the changes that we're proposing currently. Kim.
So just really quick, sorry, I was paying attention to another thing you had said and just wanted to confirm on the Orchard recommendations. So the portion that would move to Copper Hills and Wright would both still be bounded to Matheson.
Correct.
Correct. Okay.
Correct.
And then the Whittier was Hunter Junior. Okay, just confirming.
Correct. And I'm welcome to say that many, many times because, again, we're talking where they're currently going versus what was approved last year versus what we're talking about tonight. And this is a reminder to folks why we don't typically extend implementation for more than that 6 months to the following year, because it gets very difficult when you extend it out a year and a half. For those that are still a little confused about this part, I will remind you that we originally talked in the spring and up until early summer about having all of this area on the left side or the west side go to Copper Hills. And so, in other words, this area that we're recommending going to Wright, about 75 to 80 students, when fall hit, we knew that Wright was getting smaller. And when fall came, and Wright was even smaller than we anticipated. And after communication or visiting with their community council, talking to the principal and other staff there and teachers, and looking at their class sizes and other things, we were concerned. And that's when the PAC made this recommendation to have these students bolster Wright and instead of Copper Hills. Copper Hills, as it stands, would be about 500 students with this proposal, and this, with Wright losing 6th grade, this would get Wright back up to approximately 450 to 475, which is still a reasonably healthy size school. I do get concerned when we get into 300s at any point. We have a lot of schools there, but that really is the difference here, is about 75 to 80 students going to Wright instead of those students going on to Copper Hills.
I'm just board president, point of order. So clarifying questions as we go through this, but discussion we will be able to have after the hearing. Am I right?
So we have, I think, if I'm correct, you have five motions in your presentation. As I'm going through this, I think we are missing 2. So we will have to make a separate motion for each one of these, and then we can have discussion after the motion. We will be doing our public hearing first.
Before we move. Okay.
Just to clarify, obviously I don't make motions, that's a board thing. These are some guides and recommendations that were written out. And of course, obviously the board has discretion to change and do anything they want with a motion. But I did this large part for patrons and others that are trying to follow specific steps in these motions.
And it will be helpful for us to return to these when we do need to make those motions, because I think that they have to be set a certain way by state law, right?
And we have to cover each one separately.
So you're saying you want to move on but come back to the motions at the end, correct? Okay. We will move. Proposed redwood closure and boundary adjustments. And again, here's the zoomed in area. In the top, you see there's more than redwood here, but the top area where you see the word redwood in the center, that western half or on the left is proposed about 175 students in that area currently attending Redwood, proposed to go to Stansberry. The top right portion with the arrow, follow the arrows. Arrows help me a lot. I look at colors and arrows, and that portion, approximately 160, moving to Wilson Elementary. And then the bottom portion, what I refer to as the heel or the boot heel there, about 125 students to move to Granger Elementary. And by the way, the last slide here, I can refer to it if needed, and you can see it and it's there, but it has all of these enrollments, current enrollment with future proposed enrollments with all of these changes listed. One additional note there, and you can see, it's very hard to see in this one, but in the white box there with the arrow, that arrow going to Granger, is the note about all of Redwood Elementary goes currently to Granite Park Junior High. This area though, these students, there are approximately 65 to 70 junior high students in that area. And we are proposing that they not go to Granite Park Junior High anymore, but move to Valley Junior. So just at that area, move to Valley Junior. That does help, and according to our projections, with Granite Park increasing actually in enrollment over the next several years, and Valley with a slight decline, and it makes sense since that's where the Granger students currently go, so that keeps Granger a good feeder to Valley Junior High. I'm going to come back to these other arrows in just a moment, so I'm going to jump to the busing portions. And again, I want to encourage Dr. Gaddy to jump in any time as I misstate or maybe am not as accurate as I need to be. But Stansberry Elementary, this is what the new Stansberry boundary would look like. And again, the areas that are striped or hatched in this area would be eligible. Those students living in that area would be eligible for busing. It might be difficult for some to see. There are a few students up in that top area near Parkway Boulevard, but the area on the bottom, of course, is not hatched and is considered a walking area. Just a context reminder for everyone, we still have 85 to 90% of the students in Granite District that live in considered walking boundaries. Only 10 to 15, depending on how you look at it with hazard routes, are living in busing eligible areas. That's not a stat I love to recite because I don't like it necessarily. That's a reality for us as a parent, as a patron, and employee. It's difficult. It's difficult to look at some of these and have concerns, but currently as statute is and the policy is throughout the state of what constitutes a reimbursable transportation route, that those are the stats for that. So, and again, Dave, jump in if you have any, and we'll.
Yeah, I just want to point out just a couple of things. At the bottom of the yellow, you see where the green line kind of goes through the middle of the yellow, and at the bottom you see kind of those red, almost look like spaghetti noodles. That's the 215 interchange. And I do want to point out that to your right of the green line, that is all businesses. That is the Maverick Center. That is what used to be like the Denny's or whatever that is right there. So there are no students in between the green line and then the next black line to the right. That is all businesses, Hale Center Theater, what used to be Hollywood Connections when I was a kid. I don't know what it is now, but yeah.
They're laughing because they just figured your age. I know,
that's correct. And so there are some kiddos that are to the right of that black vertical line that kind of has a little bend in it to the right. And those kiddos, that's 3100 South. It looks like they would be going across I-215. They would be going over it on a bridge, and the bridge has a concrete divider between traffic and pedestrians. So that is a good bridge. So,
Dave, is that currently what they do right now? Are any kids crossing that right now?
No, right now they go to the right and go to Redwood
So
Road.
no kids are crossing that right now?
No, I don't think so. Nope. They would go to your right of that map, and down kind of in that black hatched area is where Redwood Elementary is currently. So they would be on 3100 South, but heading east and then north at 3100 South and Redwood.
I have comments about that, but I'm going to reserve it for our discussion after the public hearing.
Okay.
Because I actually drove that today. Yeah.
Okay. I'll jump to the next map, and again, as always, we can come back and have further discussion. So this is the Granger portion, again, that Boot Hill area that you see in the box. That area would be going south to Granger Elementary. That technically is not busing eligible. Dave, is there any other context for this area?
Yeah, on the top there, the top right of the yellow, that is the cultural center, where there's not homes around the cultural center either, kind of in that snake turn, and the Jordan River. So,
student residences are identified on this map. It's small, I understand, but the green dots, the green stars. Those,
yeah, one of those
are
little specks is a student that our GIS has identified as living in that location.
And then the area from Redwood that would go to Wilson. Now you can see the bright green line down in the center of this is I-15. The area in yellow that you would say is less than a mile and a half the way that doesn't qualify. First of all, there are no students living there. That's strictly commercial area. However, I believe if for some reason we had a house pop up or someone moved into a business, the back of a business, which we see occasionally, some people do live at their place of residence or their residence in a business, then we would accommodate those students that would need to get to the east side of I-15.
Yeah, that's like that flooring store that used to be like Price Savers or whatever right there. That
was also 40 years ago.
Yeah, sorry, dating myself. And then like the jail and all that stuff is right there. So none of that has, well, I guess the jail has residents, but they probably don't attend our school.
So, long story short, in summary, all that area would be bust.
Thanks for clarifying that, Dave.
Yeah, yeah.
this simply is the motion from there. Any other questions about transportation or any other part of that? Would you like to move on to the next? Okay. Again, more adjustments to Wilson and Lincoln. Again, part of the map, but a closer view a little further west. Looking at Walker Elementary, Walker is one of the areas that does have some residential development, a specific type of development that we see more students from on the kind of the southeast portion of the Walker map that's really not even on this map, but just under where the green line would be. There are a couple of apartments going in there. That will increase Walker's capacity by a pretty good amount by next fall. Therefore, we needed to make room at Walker for that. The top area on the northern part of the Walker boundary is large, but really there's only about 25 students, and they all come from one complex, the Sun River apartment complex in that area. We're proposing that those students be bused over to Wilson. The area on the bottom, striped purple with the arrow to Lincoln, there are approximately 50 students in that area, and we're proposing those students become part of the Lincoln boundary. Now at the top of that, again, it's kind of small, but you can see the arrow with the small black box there, and it's actually smaller than that in reality, but I had to make it just large enough to see that tiny thumbnail, but that represents the family shelter carve-out that I call it. There at the corner of I-15 and 3300 South, what used to be a Motel 6 is being converted into a potential family shelter. And I only use the word potential because that is still the plan, but there's still funding that has not been approved for that shelter. But assuming that goes through, the PAC is still recommending that that area be moved to the Wilson boundary, where they have the resources and capacity to handle the family shelter, and that's emphasis on family, is designed not for single people, but for families to do that. We don't know for sure when that funding, but we anticipate it could be by the end of the school year. Therefore, this piece is different, and you would see it in the motion that we would recommend that that portion be approved to be implemented January 1, 2025. So very different than what we normally do by next school year, but that's close to an immediate implementation out of need and necessity.
Steve, if I could real quick, we do in our balanced analysis of balancing transportation resources, we have included a bus to go to the Lincoln from the purple striped area. Keeping true to the not having elementary students crossing State Street.
That's this map.
So that part that's hashed, there's no students that live down there that qualify, but just below the hatched area, you can see that little cluster of students living right there along that main road. We would send a bus down that road and the kids could collect there and we could get them in kind of one of those middle route times to Lincoln. Lincoln's a middle start time school. So there would be a bus there, and we included that as part of our resource balancing analysis.
Is that both of those areas, the one that's a little further up as well as the one that's further north and the southern area? So would there be two stops?
Yeah, we would just come down from the northern edge of that boundary, straight down that main road and then in.
Are you talking about this area? This is State Street.
No, the ones that are east of State Street are crossing one smaller road.
Right.
I'm talking about the kiddos that are west of State Street.
Right.
A little bit further over, right there.
Yeah, right in there. Yep, so we would start just right on 35th South there and just come south. And we would hit, I believe that's 41st or Cody Brotherson Parkway, and then head in.
So that's West Temple, okay.
This is just simply the updated Walker boundary without those two areas. And it really doesn't change their busing other than they have less busing than before because those are going to other schools now. And those areas, like that bottom right area hatched, is around the Bud Bailey apartments and some of that area. And then you have the area west of the river.
And in our balancing of transportation resources, we account for gaining back two buses from the part of Walker that used to be on the other side of 35th. We were busing students from there because there was a concern that they were walking by the jail. And so we had a couple of buses, had to split that and go get them. And so we get those buses back and we send one to Lincoln and we use one in the 31st South study part, so.
I think you know this, and I'll just say it again. Dave, Dr. Gaddy and his team do an amazing job of trying to balance this out every year of when boundary changes, maybe you increase busing or you don't have busing in that area anymore, and trying to balance out those pluses and minuses throughout the district to make all of these work is a yeoman's task, and so we really appreciate their efforts. Jumping to the proposed DLI Spanish hybrid model. The highlights. A DLI Magnus school to be located at the Valley Crest Elementary campus. Monroe would absorb the current boundary of Valley Crest and part of Armstrong, which again, I'll show all this on a map. Stansbury would continue to host DLI. Hillsdale and Monroe will discontinue their DLI programs. Large map really is just the focus area with the yellow circle that many people have seen many, many times, but that is the geographic area that we're talking about, and that for many years we've had these four, but really we started with 5 with Granger Elementary, but we have in essence an oversaturation of DLI programs that worked for a while because of the size of the schools, but the smaller the enrollment at a school gets with DLI, or a lot of special programs, but DLI especially, the more difficult it becomes and the more challenges are created at those schools. A couple of things are interesting here. A unique transportation circumstance that we've, in studying this and really working with Dr. Gaddy and his team in transportation. These are separate but yet overlapping things that we've been looking at and studying, almost like look at them like a Venn diagram, if you will, these factors that make this kind of unique, and I'll explain what I mean a little more in a second with a few more slides, but looking at proximity and an efficient use of resources, the cost-effective scheduling and the compactness of the boundaries overall with the boundary adjustments that we're making and alignment overall, it gives us a unique opportunity. One, I'm not sure we could replicate in any other studies. I don't remember any studies in the past we could make this work similarly, or in the future, I'm not sure. But in other words, we found perhaps a Goldilocks here where we can, it's not easy, but still perhaps make some busing work, some transportation work for these. Now, I'm going to invite Dr. Gaddy to go over a couple of slides here, but they simply show some routes and part of what makes these possible in a time where it's just difficult to find more routes that aren't reimbursable through the state.
So I want you to think in your mind of a timeline. And I want you to think of a junior high school that starts at 7:50. Our drop-off time for junior highs is somewhere between 7:20 and 7:30, or sorry, 7:30 and 7:40 for a 7:50 start time. Well, we then have none of our early, well, we have one early elementary who has busing, and that's Jackling. I think 2 actually, Woodstock as well, but not very many of those exist. Our middle time elementaries who receive busing, that's all regular education busing. And the reason why that's that way is because when you get to special education busing, those routes are long. They're bigger, they're longer. You're going to individual kids' houses, students' houses, loading in wheelchairs, securing students. So it takes a long time. And so we can't have a special ed school who has special education units start before 9:05 because we need the time to collect the kids. Well, now you've got that conundrum where you've now dropped off at 7:30, 7:40 for a junior high, and you're waiting to start that longer 9:05 start time run that you might have to start at, say, 8:30, 8:20 to get there at 9:05. Well, if we have an 8:40 school and that route is less than about 12 or 13 minutes in length, we have time to go do a couple of quick stops and drop at that school, then use that same resource to continue on and do the special education route, right? So we would either be paying folks to wait and stage in their bus to start that special education route, or in a very few really cool, unique situations like this, we could go, aha, we can actually use them to accomplish a goal, to make a run cost approximately $500 a year, versus if you stick that run at the end of the day or you can't fit it anywhere, and suddenly that route balloons to about $30,000 a year. And so in this DLI example, these where you see Hillsdale to Valley Crest, we've said, hey, whether we're coming from Kennedy Junior, Hunter Junior, or Westlake Junior, because that's where those buses that we would use would have to be coming from in order to make the time work, we have routes that are anywhere between 9 and 12 or 13 minutes, which is our magic number, so they'll work to go, whether you're going to Hillsdale or Monroe. One caveat is we would probably recommend picking up the Monroe kiddos that are going to Valley Crest back in their neighborhood instead of at their school. We typically like to pick up at a school because a school's a safe place, right? But in this actual example, we need to have the start time for the DLI Magnet be the 8:40 time in order to accommodate the transportation in a more affordable way. The problem is Monroe's also at the middle start time, and we don't want to have our buses fighting to get into drop-off zones if we can avoid that. And so we would say, hey, move it to maybe like we pick up at a lot of churches because it's a big open area. Find a church or something like that, a park in the neighborhood behind it, pick up there. And we've located a couple of places that we think we could pick up to just kind of avoid that conflict on the roadway. And so we can provide busing for a really affordable cost to this DLI Magnet because of the unique situation of proximity and time.
So you just said Monroe will keep its same start time because we will do our pickup somewhere else? Okay,
Yep.
just making sure I got that right.
And let me explain real quick why we would want to keep, you'd say, well, why don't we just move the Monroe start time? Well, two reasons. If you change the start time, we all get killed. But two, the second reason is we're recapturing a bus from Armstrong Elementary. That little piece of Armstrong that's going to go to Monroe was the only part of Armstrong that we bused. So it's always a balancing act, right? Well, Monroe's that middle time. So if we take, now there is a piece of Monroe down by 35th and 5600 West, 35th South, 5600 West that now qualifies for busing because that boundary is bigger. We just take the bus that we had at Armstrong and move it down to do the Monroe one at the same time, and it's a zero-sum game. It cancels. And I took math at Hunter High School, so I know that cancels.
You know, I've had Dave try to explain a lot of these transportation issues, and I've gone over to transportation and watched, and it's like in the movies when you're watching an air traffic control tower and people in there know what they're doing and they're moving pieces around and the chessboard is adjusting and they're telling people you go here and you go there. It's a lot like that in the transportation department. There are so many moving pieces and things to consider: routes, drivers, start times, traffic patterns, so on and so on and so on. And so it's a real effort to try to make all these pieces fit.
And I do just want to mention, probably the last thing I need to mention, but we have done an analysis of all of the changes, and that if all of the changes receive only the state's qualified busing, it is a zero sum. It washes completely. We don't gain a bus, we don't lose a bus. We use all the same buses, and there are some really unique opportunities. Again, if those time constraints are right and the distance is correct, that we could maybe sneak in a middle run or two here or there. And if we go outside of that, that's when you get kind of more to the more expensive cost of buying a bus and paying the full amount. And just as an FYI, we have no more, this is a true statement, no more parking spaces at transportation for buses. If we continue to add needs for buses, we would probably have to have some sort of a capital project to be able to park them there, because we have no empty spaces. So we're maxed at that point.
And these are simply bullet points to restate the same thing that Dave has been discussing, and that is, hey, if we happen to have the middle start option, what we're talking about is minimal dollars for increased fuel for a small area. If not, then we were looking at more steps, or the middle route is not selected, then you're talking additional buses. And then at the very least, an annual cost of about $30,000, as Dave mentioned. Then, of course, if we need additional physical buses, then approximately $180,000 per bus.
it does have a drawback. It confines the ability to expand the boundary of that program in the future, because it's all got to fit in that middle time. Or in the future, we'd have to come up with the additional expenses to expand that boundary. Does that kind of make sense?
I'll move on to some of the physical changes outside of transportation, and that is again, the traditional English instruction or non-DLI students from Valley Crest and Monroe would attend Monroe Elementary. The map, again, on the right, showing that blue hatched area as part of what is currently Armstrong, and we are proposing that becomes part of this boundary. The outside thick green boundary would really become the new boundary for traditional students of Monroe Elementary. And then again, the DLI from Valley Crest, Monroe, and Hillsdale wishing to continue would attend the new DLI Academy located there. I'm going to go to a couple different maps. As a reminder, this is kind of the same map, but looks a little different. This area of Valley Crest is currently and has been for a while a split feeder. The area inside this red dotted box, if you will, currently goes to Westlake and Granger High. There are approximately 90 students at Westlake and 150 at Granger. We are proposing that this area would make Valley Crest, or what is currently Valley Crest, a clean feeder. So instead of Westlake Granger, they go to Hunter Junior and Hunter High School. So if you go back and look at the map again with that change, you can see Hunter Junior and Hunter High on the left for Valley Crest, Westlake and Granger High on the right. That includes the portion of Armstrong. That does make that new boundary a split feeder, but that's what that change looks like. This helps accomplish a couple of things. Gives Hunter Junior a few more students that we anticipate they will need in the future, as well as gives Granger High a little more relief of about 150 students. Something we've been trying to accomplish in the last several years. The busing, again, transportation maps. This is that same boundary, what would be the new Monroe boundary. Bottom left, I believe, Dave, that's the corner of 56th and 35th. On the very corner, we know there are some, there's commercial and fast food and things there, but a little further, there are some students that qualify for busing in that area.
Steve, can you remind us real quick on the go back between Clark's asking me a question and I can't remember the answer. DLI kiddos, where do they go to junior high? So for those that have gone to the Valley Crest DLI, where do they go next for DLI to continuance? Is it both at Hunter and at Granger?
Great question. So most of those students have chosen to continue on at Westlake and Granger High, even if, say, for instance, they lived in another boundary. Because that has been the path and the way we have done that. So most of those students have ended up at Westlake and Granger High. However, we are not taking DLI opportunities out of Westlake and Granger. Sherry Sorensen, who's our DLI director, has come up with a plan to simply use our current Spanish teachers to accommodate those DLI students, whether that's at Hunter Junior or Brockbank or Matheson or whatever school they go back to, because they often go back to their boundary junior highs. And she believes we can accommodate those DLI students with those Spanish teachers at those schools. So we're not losing programs, we would just simply be adding opportunities.
But let's say I don't live in this area, but just hypothetically, if I have a student that lives in that Valley Crest Pink area, now they're part of the Monroe, but as far as their secondary feeder, it's Hunter, will they be accepted in the Granger network if they choose to be for the DLI program? Because they would have to go through the special permit process, correct?
They would.
And what's the likelihood of their acceptance? We know Granger's crowded, trust me, my daughter's there, I know. But what's the likelihood? Because I think several of us got an email that was mentioning this anyway, or at least I did.
Yeah, I believe, again, the answer is they can always apply open enrollment anywhere, of course. If the rationale, though, is because that's where the DLI program is, I don't know if that would fly, simply because what we're saying is there will be DLI opportunities at the other schools. And so not just at Westlake and Granger where they have to follow a teacher or the program there. So additional teachers are added at these other schools to accommodate those.
So, I mean, essentially, you're creating a DLI program at Hunter Junior and Hunter High. It doesn't have, it's not as big of a change as if you just like blanket put a DLI program in, because we already have a high enrollment for native speakers. And so there's already lots of FTE that way. This is what Sherry explained to me this morning. And at the high school level, it mostly impacts your ninth graders. So she felt pretty confident that while I kept saying, so we're creating a new DLI program at Hunter Junior and Hunter High, she was saying, yes, but that sounds like a bigger deal than it is.
Right, and that's you're getting exactly at my point, is I know there are families out there who love the traditional, DLI program. That's what they chose. They envision their kids going to Westlake, going to Granger, maintaining that more pure DLI track is what I'm getting at. So I appreciate what you're saying, but putting Spanish teachers in Hunter High and Hunter Junior, I'm not denigrating their quality or their work or whatever, but it's not apples to apples as far as the DLI program. That's what I'm getting at. So for those who might live on the Hunter side of the line, what's the likelihood for those who want a true DLI experience? Because I know an email came in, with a parent just kind of frantically trying to go through like, tell me what I'm supposed to do. Am I supposed to go on special permit here if I want my kids? So that's why I'm bringing this up, because if one parent's asking, there are more out there.
I guess I would go back to Sherry and her expertise here. When you say a true, pure DLI program, I don't know if, is there a difference? And is there a program or is it a teacher? Again, Sherry says that is completely possible to do the same things in these other schools that they're currently doing at Westlake. So I will defer to her a bit on this. I'm not the DLI expert, and if we need to bring her in as an expert witness, if you will, then we need to do that.
I just remember one more thing that she said about that. She said that currently those classes are native speaker classes. They would change to be DLI 2, whatever that curriculum is, the curriculum that would be taught, but that native speakers would be able to fill in the cracks there, and I said, well, native speakers don't necessarily always read and write. How are you going to handle that? And she said, we have plenty of skills to bring them up. But now, instead of just working on their native speech, they also get to learn the reading and writing. So that was the explanation that she gave me.
I'm just trying to make sure I understand this correctly also. So if they're moving from the DLI program into now Hunter Junior, they're saying the Spanish classes offered there already will fulfill this DLI movement of going through
No.
junior high to high school, or no?
She was saying the Spanish teachers there can fulfill the requirement and they would change the curriculum to be the DLI curriculum.
So they would have to change Hunter
They
Junior.
would change the curriculum, but the teachers would remain.
Right, but they would have to
And it would be geared towards a different population, but they
Right.
have enough of a population that's interested
That would
in other
support.
things that she's saying it wouldn't impact your FTE or your electives too much, which is what I've seen in my junior highs is an impact on electives. So I was concerned about that.
Okay.
But she
A
was
lot
like,
of-
no.
As far as the traditional DLI, just from experience, there's some programs that, the Spanish especially, I guess I'm saying, is that traditional DLI program, often the second class, because they usually do a primary language class and then a culture class, but because there are so few kids in junior high, because there is such a small amount of electives, often they drop that culture class. In Spanish and in French, as I've talked to teachers, I'm just saying this, they have said it is easy to incorporate that culture class into their regular classes. Chinese is a little harder it's a more complex language. So at least as far as the 2 Chinese programs that I am aware of, we've been pushing that a little bit more. But I think that's what they're saying, is that we're already teaching that level of Spanish. It would not be hard to incorporate that culture aspect into it.
So to be clear, somebody is texting me by the name of Sherry. I don't know who she is.
Thank you, Sherry.
She is indicating there are only course offerings in junior high, not DLI programs in junior high, and I think that speaks to what you're indicating here. We do offer the culture class, but then they're taking the regular programming as well.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean that to be quite a long conversation on clarification.
It needs to be clarified.
The reason for the DLI-2 were, and Sherry, you correct me in text, is that with the 6th grade has to be DLI-2, but then above that, it's just course offering.
Spanish for heritage speakers is usually dropped, and they add DLI instead and put heritage speakers in DLI.
Because in 7th grade, you take the Chinese, Spanish, or French ones. 8th grade is 2, 3, 4, anyway, so that you're 4 in 9th grade, and then you can take AP in 10th grade again. That's how it works.
AP in 9th grade.
Well, okay, for Chinese, it was Chinese 4 in 9th grade, and then AP, you can take it again as an AP in 10th grade, so you're not repeating it.
They have 3 bridge classes.
Yeah, yeah. So it's complex, sorry. Yeah.
Oh,
So
great
the
question,
concern is
and
there's a
thanks for the
pathway, and
clarification.
we have been assured there is a pathway, as we've talked about it. Okay.
Okay. I just scanned, and that's just simply the table that you've seen many times, and just goes over the enrollments if you have questions, but it just something we've seen many times. So, discussion, questions?
We're going to go
Motions.
ahead and do the public hearing first. If there's no questions about that particular presentation, we're going to go ahead and move into the public hearing portion of this. Again, if you haven't had a chance to sign up, there's a sheet out there still. Luke already has a sheet, so we're going to go ahead and start that. Just as a reminder, we ask that this is a public hearing specifically for the things that we have just been discussing here, the PAC, with this study. So your comments should be directed specifically towards one of these portions of the study. We would like you to stay as close to 3 minutes as possible so that we can get everybody through and we can still have our discussion. And you can hear the chime. So that will be your cue. But we do want to hear from everybody who has a desire to speak to this. So we are going to go ahead and start with Candace. Is it File, I'm so sorry. And then Emily Schultz will be next. So as Candace comes on up, and would you please also, just for the record, so we have it correctly, state your name and do we need the address? So your name and then the area, like what exactly you're addressing. So which school you're with.
Okay. I'm Candace File. I am the Community Council Chair at Orchard Elementary. And what else was it I needed to?
That's good.
That's it?
Go
Okay.
ahead.
So my biggest concern with all of the school closing is my children, I have a first grader, and when I asked him how he would feel if the school closed, he said he would feel sad because he likes it there. He doesn't want to move anywhere else. But my biggest concern is that if the school does close, my street is barely outside of the bus that would take my kids to Whittier. And I just worry really very strongly about my little kindergartner who's going to be starting kindergarten next year. He's just really tiny. And I do not feel comfortable with him having to cross, I think it's like 60th and 64th. that's 2 busy streets, not 1, 2. And I am utterly terrified of that. Like, I've had nightmares about it. And I just want my child to have, like, comfort as well. Because I've seen people, even with crossing guards and things, I've seen cars go straight through. And it terrifies me, not just for my kids, but the other students that live barely out of that. And so that's just my biggest concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Candace. We appreciate your comments. Emily Schultz will be next. And as Emily comes up, Lindsay, you will be next up. Lindsay Mosley? Did I get that right?
We were told that the Magna Elementary STEAM discussion would happen this evening as well, in the reconstitution. So that's what I'm speaking on, but I didn't see that being presented. Is it okay to still speak to you?
So like the
reconstituting
the
of
Magna
Magna
STEAM.
Elementary, Magna STEAM.
It's part of the, it's not technically part of the PAC study, so
Okay,
I
that's-
regret that was communicated. I would leave it to the board if they would like to allow public comment, but I don't think we should allow it as part of the public hearing for the closures and PAC study. Perhaps we could put it, if
Can
you
we
guys
get
wouldn't
you at
mind
the
hanging
end?
out.
I'm so sorry.
That would be fine. That would be fine.
2 hours.
So we're gonna be at the end.
Lindsay? Is it Mosley? Yes. Okay. And then Deborah Wild?
So I am Lindsay Mosley, and I will be talking about the
Can you,
Orchard.
sorry, can you pull that up to, yeah.
Sorry. Lindsay Mosley, talking about Orchard Elementary. So I'm a mom of 2 students at Douglas. My youngest is in kindergarten, and my oldest is in 6th grade. My husband and I both work. My husband has a blue-collar job, so that means early mornings. And I work with a local law enforcement agency working 8 to 4 hours. We've been on a permit since my oldest was in kindergarten, since my husband and I both work. We have a family friend that runs an in-home daycare around the corner from Orchard that both my kids go there before and after. With the school possibly closing, she's going to be losing more than half her income, because a lot of the kids that she takes in before and after school that the parents pay, since they all have to work too, she's going to be losing that income. And now she's going to have to figure out what she's going to do, if she's going to have to go and find another job or pull Social Security earlier than what she was hoping for. So not only is this affecting the students, it's also affecting the parents emotionally and with all this stress. And then also the citizens that have in-home daycares around the areas. And a lot of the parents rely on stuff like that because it is hard as a parent not to be having both parents work full-time. I think we can all agree as parents that sending our kids to school with mass violence in the schools is already stressful enough, but adding the possibility of school closures creates a whole nother level of stress. Like the other parent that started this conversation, she's been having nightmares. I've been stressed beyond belief with all of this because I rely heavily on Orchard being in that area and my kids being able to walk to school safely because it's in a neighborhood. I also have 2 boys that are very small in height. There's no way I can have my 6-year-old crossing the busy streets, especially in the wintertime. Even with that push button, there's still so many cars that I've seen that don't stop and pay attention, especially when the road gets slick. And that's a very steep hill, and you have people going down very fast. We've looked at all different possibilities, even charter schools, trying to figure out transportation for both of our kids, or me having to adjust my hours at work and losing out time with my kids and my family at night. The start time for Whittier is 9 a.m. and my oldest is going to be in middle school and he's going to be starting school at 7:45. So this is why it's difficult for us to figure out what we're going to do with Orchard closing, because we rely on it a lot. And I know that I'm not the only parent that has to deal with multiple kids in multiple schools. My son has a classmate who's a single parent home. She takes 4 different kids to 3 different levels of school every day. She drops her youngest 2 off at elementary school very last, and even then they're going to school early and they have to wait outside, especially in the wintertime. It's sad to see that she has to do that in order for her to get to work in the morning on time. And not only that, but losing the staff that we have. Ms. Hull has been an amazing principal. I've met with her on different concerns, and her communication has been outstanding during the time that she's been there. And not only that, but our teachers and even our crossing guard that all of our kids love. They all have a special handshake with him, and it's going to be so sad to think that all of these teachers and all of this staff have to figure out what they're going to do if Orchard closes. And I appreciate your time, and that's all that I have.
Thank you. All right, Deborah. And after Deborah, we'll have Mindy.
Hi, my name is Deborah Wild, and I live just a few houses away from Orchard Elementary. Both my husband and I work, and we leave really early in the morning, so I have an alarm set for my kids to wake up, an alarm set for them to go to school. I pay my nephew, who lives right next door, to go to check and make sure that my kids are good in the morning and they get off to school, they eat their breakfast at school, and my husband and I are both able to be home when they're home from school. If Orchard Elementary closes, there's no way I can get my kids to school. I can't drive them myself. My biggest concern, this is my first time here in person, but I have watched the recordings, I've looked over the maps, I've gone over all of the information, and I have not seen where you guys have provided a safe walking route for our kids to go to school. Have any of you driven over in that area and been on those roads and seen the streets? So you have seen how busy 7200 West is. You have seen how busy 3500 South is, and you have seen how busy 6000 West and 6400 West are. And those are the roads that you are requesting that our kids walk by themselves to get across the street. My kids are going to have to leave my house about 7 o'clock in the morning in order to get to school on time because the school is so far away now. They eat breakfast at school, so they would have to leave way before a crossing guard is assigned to safely get them across 3500 South. There is a big construction project going on right now, right behind Orchard Elementary, where they're putting in 65 new homes there. That's 65 new homes with more traffic right where my kids are going to have to cross the street. That is where that whole subdivision is. And in order for them to get to Wright Elementary, I have a second and a third grader that would be walking by themselves, and it terrifies me, absolutely terrifies me. I can't have my sister take them because, like the other girl said, my sister is watching other people's children and she cannot leave to take my kids to school because she's watching younger kids that she's in charge of, and I have no other way to get them there. My husband and I have looked for alternatives to try and figure out what to do. We cannot homeschool. We are in an impossible situation. If Orchard closes, I don't know what we're gonna do. But it scares me like crazy that there is no safe walking route if you close Orchard for any of those feeder schools. Absolutely nowhere that you want to shove these children. There is no safe way to get them there. And if you do this, if you close Orchard Elementary, the likelihood that a child will die while walking to and from school increases exponentially. And I urge you to please, please do not close Orchard. If you do close Orchard, you better find a safe way to get our kids to school, because what you have right now is not acceptable. Thank you.
We have Mindy Harding, and after her we have Adriana Flores.
Hi, I'm Mindy Harding. I am with Monroe Elementary, so I'm just going to talk on the DLI stuff. I've talked to a few of you already, but my main concern is just that all of the kids that have been able to have the opportunity to participate in the DLI program be able to continue that. And my concern with everything going to Valley Crest is that a lot of the Monroe kids might not be able to, and now it's going to go down to transportation issues again. I was hoping to hear a little bit more information about how the busing for the Hillsdale and Monroe kids to Valley Crest would happen, and how what portion of those would be able to be transported. But I feel like if there's not adequate transportation, I don't know how a DLI magnet program at Valley Crest would be sustainable. Because without the kids from Monroe especially, and from Hillsdale, I don't know that there would be enough students to be able to fill it. And so I know that there are several reasons why they've decided to choose the Valley Crest campus. I know traffic issues are one of them. I know that there's a lot of out-of-boundary kids that go to Valley Crest, but I feel like the kids that are out of boundary to Valley Crest would also be willing to go to, say, Monroe, which is in the middle of those three schools. So, yeah. And then I also am wondering about the likelihood of our kids, especially the kids that live in the east of the boundary, if they would be more likely to go to the magnet school, or a lot of them would actually be closer to Esperanza, which is a charter DLI school. And we want to try to avoid losing kids to charter schools. So especially a lot of the kids in the south part of Monroe's boundaries are going to be closer to that. And so I don't know if that's been considered or not. And then I was hoping, really, I know we've done several surveys, and we had one that came out that was done just this last week, but I would be really interested to see survey results, to see what the families had said, if there was many families that are willing to travel, that have the ability to travel, because I know that's one of the things that have been communicated in our school, is that there are a lot of families that just simply do not have the option. They don't have the option to take their kids to school. They have to be able to walk. And if they don't have that option, then that magnet program is not going to be sustainable. So yeah, ultimately, I also want to make sure that our teachers have options. I know there's also been a concern about the English teacher portion of the DLI program, and having those teachers have the opportunity to go to the magnet program with their Spanish, like in their Spanish partnerships, if that's an option. And I just really want to make sure these kids have put in a lot of effort, and want to make sure that they are able to have that opportunity not taken away from them, because there might be potentially students from out of the boundary that might eventually come to the magnet school. I would rather prioritize the kids that are currently in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. Adriana?
Hi, I signed up, Adriana Flores from Orchard, and I signed up because my son wants to talk to you guys.
Can you pull that microphone down? Perfect.
Hello, I am Leonardo, but you can call me Cal. I, for one, think that it's a little bit wrong that you're shutting down the school just because it's old and it's not as popular. But I know that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. And if you shut down the school, kids will be sad because their friends won't be at the same school. And even though it's November, I think some of you guys should have some Christmas spirit. So who's with me to keep Douglas T. Orchard Elementary in business?
Thank you, Cal. That's Cal, and he did kindergarten online, and that was a total disaster for him. Orchard was the school that opened its arms for him after the pandemic. He is very anxious. He's actually on medication for anxiety. And since he learned that Orchard might be closing, he's been having all these questions about it and what's going to happen, where are his friends going to, where is he going to? And like all the other parents have been saying, there's no safe walking options. We are right on 72, and that is a very, very busy street, and both 64, 60, 60th, and 72 are on a hill. And like the parent said, in the wintertime, there's a lot of danger with the drivers because we know they don't slow down to a safe speed for children. You can see Kara right here. She's in 2nd grade, and she looks like she's in kindergarten. So there are little things that are huge to us and our kids about closures. Do you want to say something, Kara? Well, thank you.
All right, we have 3 more. Amy Warren.
Hi guys, I'm Amy Warren. I represent the pink area, the Valley Crest pink area. You guys were talking about the DLI track, and I wanted to bring to your attention that it is a small group of students, the 80 students, but those that are not on the DLI track, the majority of them, special permit to Neil Armstrong, STEM Academy, and they see themselves on the STEM track, which Westlake is the STEM track. So that area has been planning on Westlake, their friends go to Westlake, their friends are all going to Westlake because they've been at Valley Crest, which gets special permits to Westlake, they get a preference there. And then the ones that go to Armstrong, all their Armstrong friends are going to Westlake, which obviously, you know, when you special permit to a school that you don't always get the same feeder. But there also has been, and I've discussed with a couple of you and with Steve, this kind of got thrown in with everything else, which is like, it's the most minor part of the study, but it kind of got thrown in. And as I've talked to my community, if they didn't know me, they don't know what's going on. Like they have been getting notifications, they've been getting postcards, but it's all been like DLI study, DLI this, DLI. So if they're like, oh, it's DLI, it doesn't apply to me. So I do worry, like the initial explanation for it was to make Valley Crest no longer a split feeder, which is great. But now we're just making Monroe a split feeder if all of this goes through. So it seems to be kind of taking Westlake away from those families that have been planning on it for both the DLI track and the STEM track. So I just wanted to bring that portion to your attention as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Brianna Davis. And after Brianna, we have Riley Ogden.
Good evening, Superintendent, President McDermott, and board members. I had not been planning on speaking. My name is Brianna Davis. I am actually an employee for Granite School District. I work in transportation, and I'm here. I just would like you guys to consider some additional things when it comes to moving Orchard Elementary to Whittier. I want you to understand, I do understand that schools do need to be closed for a variety of reasons. When I last drove, I drove for Whittier Elementary. Whittier Elementary has approximately 5 special needs buses where they transport students who do have to have special transportation for a variety of things. And it was a daily struggle to be able to get my bus safely into the bus zone, as well as get my students loaded and get them safely out. So many of these students are still going to be walking students, which means due to their size or parents scheduling, their parents are going to pick them up and drop them off. There is no safe place near Whittier Elementary for parents to be able to do so. The bus zone, while it can fit 8 buses, which if we had to bus the 180 to 200 students that would be moving over to Whittier from Orchard, we would be able to fit those buses, but that does leave no room for the daycare buses, and it would create a bigger struggle and a bigger fight with the parents for them to safely pick up their students, as well as for us to be able to pick up our students. Again, I understand we do have to close schools for a variety of reasons, but I just want to ask the board to please make sure that you're looking at that as well. Because while the numbers are, I wish that the unit classes had been brought up a little bit more when it does come to busing. Whittier is a huge busing school for the unit classes. And so I just would ask the board to take a couple minutes to really consider that and make sure that that can be taken care of as well for the safety of both our unit students as well as the walking and busing students. Thank you.
Thanks, Brianna. Riley?
Hello, I'm Riley Ogden. I reside in West Valley, and I currently work at Academy Park Elementary. I'm going to be just speaking on Redwood closure, and if you guys have considered the drive-ins that are on Redwood Road and the closure of that and how it impacted the community there. A lot of kids, and sorry. A lot of kids with the swap meet go to work with their parents. And with the closure of the drive-ins, that's about 600 or so businesses that are being closed too. And so those kids are not responsible for that toll, but that's a weight on their shoulder because their parents are now looking for new jobs and stuff. So if they're dealing with the school closure, that's a whole lot of stress on those kids. And one that I hope you guys have taken into consideration. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Luke, did we have any others? Okay. I believe that is all. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing, and then we want to invite Emily Schultz back up just to address us. We apologize for the confusion on this.
So just to clarify, as they're coming up here, we did have a meeting with faculty yesterday after school regarding the Magnus Steam rebrand and faculty reconstitution. And so I'm assuming that this would be with respect to that
And before we start, I
meeting.
just want to say sorry about the comment. I know we've all been sitting here for 2 hours. I wasn't trying to discount anybody else.
Good evening, esteemed members of the school board. Thank you for granting me the opportunity to speak with you today. I truly appreciate your time and dedication that you invest in the students of Granite District. I am Emily Schultz, a teacher formerly known as Miss Andresi, and I present myself as part of a legacy deeply rooted in education and community service. My mother, Stacy Andresi, has dedicated 34 years to teaching in the Magna community. Together, we represent a lineage of commitment and devotion to the children of Magna. And it is on this foundation that I address you this evening regarding the proposed changes of Magna Elementary. Our staff has been taken aback by the announcement that every faculty member from kindergarten through 6th grade must reapply for their positions at Magna Elementary. While we appreciate the empathy shown by the leadership in light of our distress, the process and outcomes leave much to be desired. There has been lack of proper consideration and procedures. It appears that the decision was made through consideration without thorough consideration, bypassing standard procedures. There was no opportunity for discourse or feedback from a sounding board. Also, there was a secrecy and a lack of communication. The process felt secretive and lacked transparency. Faculty and staff were not properly informed about the impeding changes, and the timeline was executed with alarming speed. What began as a hypothetical scenario rapidly became reality within 2 months. Alarmingly, the community was informed of these changes before the staff, leaving us unable to provide answers to concerned parents and community members. The requirements for long-serving teachers to reapply and interview for their positions is both distressing and disheartening. The educators at Magna Elementary are deeply committed to their students and to this community. To subject them to this process implies a questioning of their dedication and efficiency, which is both unfair and unwarranted. Moreover, the announcement that the current administration will continue into the new phase of this reconstitution deviates from standard reconstitution procedures. This decision compounds the stress and uncertainty among faculty as we navigate the current academic year under an administration that holds our professional futures in his hands. We, the teachers of Magna Elementary, are committed to our school and our community. We are dedicated to continuing our work and should have the opportunity to do so without having to reprove our worth. It is my hope that the board considers the impact of these decisions and works collaboratively with us to ensure a fair and transparent process for all. Thank you once again for your time and attention to these pressing concerns. We trust in your commitment to the best interests of both our staff, faculty, and the students of Magna Elementary. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone who shared your thoughts. We appreciate all the perspectives that have been shared. We're going to go ahead and return back to our the proposals that we've had, and let's talk about them. Let's do them one at a time. So, I don't have it in mind, but Steve will put them up, right? So the first one that we have is the proposal for...
I don't think I had a written motion for this one.
Yeah, that's one of them.
So that's my bad.
Nope, no. So this is our small little part. I didn't find one on there, but this is just so the proposal is to move portions of Pleasant Green Elementary to Lake Ridge Elementary. This is just that one street that is kind of the outlier currently, and they wanted to clean up the boundary.
I move that we accept a motion? I move that we change the boundary of Sinbad Way from Pleasant Green to Lake Ridge Elementary.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to move the street Sinbad Way from Pleasant Green Elementary to Lake Ridge Elementary. Is there any further discussion on this particular motion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great. I think that was an easy one. All right.
Do we need a motion here so we can have discussion?
So we have the recommended motion to approve the closure of Orchard Elementary with the boundary adjustments to Copper Hills, Whittier, and Wright Elementary Schools, and to include the portion of Orchard to Whittier to remain a feeder to Hunter Junior High. This was the question that I had, Steve, on the paper here. You have when the secondary boundary changes, portions of Matheson Junior to Hunter Junior. Is this, in regard to that, is this a change for the secondary feeder as well? Does that need to be included in this?
For the, which portion, sorry, for the Whittier?
Portions of Matheson Junior High to Hunter Junior High. What was that in regards to?
Is that the Copper Hills with the orchard closure proposal?
Right. So again, I'll restate what I think you're saying, but correct me if I don't get this right. The portions going of Orchard on the left side to Whittier and to Copper Hills, that those would continue, as approved last year, continue to go to Matheson and Cypress.
So I guess the question is in the motion, do we need the motion to include that we would change next year's junior high boundary for that
Only the
section on the right that will be going to Hunter Junior?
Correct. To include the portion of Orchard to Whittier to remain a feeder to Hunter Junior High.
Yeah.
to remain a feeder to Hunter Junior.
So it should be
The
remain a
tricky-
feeder to Hunter, not portions of Matheson Junior to Hunter. So we're not taking any of Matheson away to Hunter.
That was late. She's reading off our public notice, so we're making sure that we are up here making sure we follow the law in terms of the motions that we're proposing and passing.
Right. The tricky part for some people who have been questioned on this is the word remain. They're remaining there as they currently attend. However, it requires a motion to change it because it was changed to Matheson last year and is scheduled to change for next year. But again, saying another way, that area on the east side of Orchard is proposed to be changed back to, technically, to Hunter Junior instead of Matheson.
Okay, so that's the question. Does it say, do we need to have it say remain, or if it's already been a motion to move it to Matheson, we have to make the motion to move that back, amend that, or move that back? Would it be an amendment that we need to make, or to put it, so that it needs to say, instead of remaining a feeder to Hunter Junior, we will say that portion will be returning to Hunter, or we will move that portion to Hunter Junior.
Right. To be clear. It certainly can be said that way. I got to be honest, I had it saying that, and then someone said, well, that's confusing because it's going back to when they never really left, yet it was changed last year. So, yes.
Let's just say that Whittier to feed to Hunter Junior High. How about that?
Fair enough.
I mean, I'm an English teacher.
Simple is
I don't wanna
good.
brag.
All right, so are we clear on what the motion is?
I don't want to make this motion because I want to have a discussion about the portion of the boundary going to right. So
have to make a motion before
I know people
discussion.
are saying, well, someone make a motion.
Chris,
That's
do you
why I'm
wanna
not making it.
Would you like to make a different motion? That's the question.
So can I make a substitute motion?
Well, nobody's made a
Oh,
motion.
we don't have any motion. So
You
can I
want.
make a motion that is different than this motion?
You can make whatever motion you want, except to adjourn.
Well, that would be nice, but.
Before we make any motions, I would like to clarify for our public here, all of these are first readings. So all of these will require a second reading. Whatever action the board takes tonight will also be replicated in an additional meeting and another public hearing held at the December board meeting. So again, if there are adjustments to these motions, these proposals made by the Board of Education, there would be an additional opportunity for public comment as well. So thank you for letting me make that clarification.
So I would propose that the motion to approve the closure of Orchard Elementary with boundary adjustments to Copper Hills and Whittier only, without Wright Elementary included in that.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to close Orchard Elementary and the boundary adjustments be from Orchard to Whittier and to Copper Hills only, not to Wright Elementary. Is there discussion on this?
Can I just explain why? Okay. So originally, when Orchard was on this PAC study, the original was to take take Orchard and split it into Copper Hills and Whittier Elementary, which I felt was sad to close Orchard, but I felt that was more indicative for that neighborhood to split into 2 schools instead of 3. And so when the addition of Wright Elementary came up, that was very concerning to me. I don't think that's a safe walking passage at all for those kids to go across 3500 South on that busy intersection of 7200 South and or West and 3500 South. So also I think it is, when we're moving these schools, I feel like we really need to be making sure that we're moving them to schools with strong leadership, and that also these kids are familiar with who they're going with. So splitting the neighborhood in half this way makes more sense to me than in thirds. Or with the 1/2 in, half again. So that is my recommendation. Board members, I know I've talked to some of you about this, that my concerns was safety first and foremost for those Wright Elementary boundary kids, and also that we need strong, Copper Hills is a strong school and Whittier is a very strong school, and so is Wright, but in different ways for these students' needs. Also, I know a lot of parents talked about how there's not a safe walking route right now, but we do have some kids that cross already, correct me, Steve, on 64 to get to Whittier already from the neighborhood. Is that correct or not correct? I need some clarification on that. The current boundary of Whittier.
I'll show you what that looks like. So the area, it's not 64, no, that's the current boundary of between Whittier
But they cross
and
60
Orchard.
then, correct?
But with this proposal, they would be crossing, correct?
Okay. All right, that's just my recommendation.
Go ahead.
Did I?
Going back to will you flip to the other slide, please? The concern, and I've talked with Chris, and so I knew her feelings on this. We spoke earlier today, but and I looked to her. I mean, we all know our precincts better than anybody else, and so I was like, "Hey, Chris, this is your area. Can you help me understand, the community needs, the community concerns?" I do. That's 3500 South, right? They would have to cross 35th. And we've heard tonight a lot of concerns about this safe walking route. And that's, as I looked at the map and talked to Chris, that's a big concern for me. 3500 is just busy and kind of scary, really, and people are just whipping up and down that road. And so after, just kind of looking at this map, I feel better about, at the very least, it's really hard when we look at any boundary study to avoid any big road. It's hard, and it's when we do care about our kids' safety. But I was happy to kind of, through Chris's recommendation, eliminate at least one hazard, that 3500 South, not having to cross that at all, and to have kids stay, on one side of 35th. So I support that recommendation.
My attitude about this is that actually I feel like I've seen us in many cases across the district create safe options for people as they cross roads like 3500 South. In fact, I would say my own children and myself as a kid who went to Cottonwood Elementary crossed streets as busy as that to get to my school. So while I don't think there's a safe walking route there now, I feel very confident that our school district could keep our kids safe and create that, right? It doesn't exist now because we don't need it, but I think that we could, and I think that we have kids crossing busier streets than that, honestly. And yeah, I have, I drove all around this because our awesome teachers at Orchard inspired me to go make sure that I knew what I was voting on with that. But the reason that I support, or the thing that is the conundrum for me, is that there's a sense in which I think I feel like the right place for those kids in that quadrant there is Copper Hills. But that the reason we're moving there is because it's what's right for the right kids. And that's a tricky thing, because do you move them there because that's what's right for the right kids, or do you move them to the place that we think is right for them? Because you're responsible for all of those kids. So I don't really know the answer to that question, but I do feel like I want to trust, I think that Chris's gut is going to be the right thing on this. So I think that I'm going to support what you're talking about.
Just with just a point of information for the board, knowing this amendment was possible, I asked Steve to pull some numbers for us of what our estimates would be with this particular proposal. Could you share that with us, Steve, please?
You bet. Again, it really is a net add or loss of, we'll just say 75 students, one way or the other. Again, just to rehash kind of what I mentioned earlier, you're right, we did have this split in half where all of this West Side was going to Copper Hills earlier. When we reevaluated at the beginning of the school year and saw that Wright was coming in smaller in enrollment than even we anticipated, then I had a conversation with Tim, the principal, and also with their community council, and heard their concerns about what was happening with losing sixth grade and just going down in enrollment. Was when I took that back to the PAC, and the PAC says, you know what, let's bolster that community with those numbers. I will say this anecdotally, I don't have the data necessarily to support this, but it is what I've heard in conversations with in working with safe walking routes people. And by the way, let me say again, I really don't like that term that is there called a safe walking route. If I'm king for a day, I'm going to call it the best bad idea we have walking route, because sometimes that's what they are. But they are the safest or the most preferred walking route in a large suburban area that are oftentimes not ideal walking routes. Dr. Getty and I did go out. We can't get to all of these walking routes. We did walk one morning when students would be walking from Copper Hills through Orchard to Whittier and back to understand what that looked like from ground level, maybe about a foot higher than the students, but to understand and feel what that looks like. Because you're not just looking at a street, you're looking at other hazards. Sometimes there are large dogs behind small fences, sometimes there are cars parked. And but what I'll say finally is that this sometimes feels it's hard to believe this, but I've seen this, and talking to some police officers have identified this issue, and that is oftentimes our busier intersections can be some of the safer intersections in comparison to some of residential streets. And what I mean is when you're crossing an intersection like 35th, you have street lights, you have traffic lights, you have crossing guards, you have turn signals, you have a crosswalk, and all of those things to your advantage. And when people are typically more aware at busy intersections versus oftentimes smaller, narrow residential streets that are not well lit, that have garbage cans, that have cars, that have RVs and everything parked there, and students darting in and out those areas. So it doesn't make sense sometimes to think of it that way, but that can be the case. And again, going back to our district, that's what we are. We're a large district, and sometimes we have those crossings. I'm sorry, Superintendent, I'm getting to your answer, but I was giving you a little background about how we came to that conclusion, and everyone would like to go to bed in a few minutes. I get it. So, in essence, that is, without glasses, somebody would have to, let's do it this way. Maybe it's large enough that I can see it. There we go. So if you're looking at Copper Hills, what that does is the current proposal has Copper Hills at an estimated 500. This would increase them to approximately 575, and then Wright, instead of 475, down to about 400. So in other words, you're just moving plus minus 75 either way. That was a long answer for a simple math problem.
I'll just say for my part, having gone through this also with other schools, it's hard though to compromise one school for the benefit of another, and I recognize that is the reason why I want to say compromise. That's sound anyway. I do want to shore up Wright, but I'm wondering if there's some other answers there that we can look at perhaps later. But if we're looking at what's best for those Orchard kiddos, at 3,500, I get it. My kids cross 215 in Redwood. My kids go through the busiest intersection in the entire state when they walk home. So it's scary. I get it. But I really do want to do what's best, as the best thing that we can do in this situation. This is a hard situation to be in, but I would prefer to keep those kiddos, especially considering that they are a neighborhood together, I'd like to see them stay as much together as possible. So for that reason, I would agree with Chris.
I also need to amend that motion because I forgot the junior high component. So did we do a second? Or do a second motion? Yeah.
Okay,
A substitute motion?
Oh,
It wouldn't change the junior high, whether those students are going to Wright or
right. But do I have to
Copper
say
Hills,
that in
it's
the
still
motion?
the Matheson feeder and Cypress feeder.
But she didn't say it in the motion.
Okay.
For the junior high.
Okay.
Just so we
I
are
just,
crossing our T's,
if it needs to
right?
be in there.
Okay,
Wanna be
gotcha.
sure. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to accept the proposed closure of Orchard Elementary with the boundary adjustments to Copper Hills and Whittier Elementary Schools. Is there any further discussion? As a first reading, thank you.
I just would like to add, personally, I would like the parents and the community members and the teachers and everyone who has given feedback to know that we do hear you and we feel the pain. And that's why these are such hard decisions to make. It may seem like you speak and then we don't hear it because we make a decision that wasn't what you were hoping for. I can just say personally, having gone through this now for the last 2 years in a row, that there are so many different data points that come into this decision, so many different factors. And it's almost like there's no right answer. There's no right answer because nobody will ever, we're not going to please everybody ever. And we are doing our best to make a decision that is going to benefit the students the best way that we can see. So I just want to make that comment that, you know, we do hear you and we appreciate your feedback. And I want you to know that.
Thanks, Kim. All right. So without a motion and a second for the first reading, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. We'll go ahead and move on to the Redwood Elementary.
Do we need
Oh,
the
sorry.
junior high?
You need to do
I have-
junior high.
oh, sorry.
There you go.
Is it a?
So I propose, wait.
I just see so many people who have to be back in class again tomorrow, and I just thank you for being here. I know you're going to be so tired tomorrow. Appreciate your dedication.
By the way, just with that adjustment, instead of going to Wright, I will have, Dr. Gaddy is going to redraw a map to make sure that doesn't change any transportation eligibility there. I don't think so, but we will double check that and get that posted or send it out to you.
ASAP, like tomorrow.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, so I move we approve that the east side of the Orchard closure go to Hunter Junior High and the west side go to, well, Matheson Junior High, which already was going to.
Correct.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second that.
And a second to have the east side of the Orchard feed to Hunter Junior High and the west side of that will continue to Matheson. Is there any discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. All right. Redwood is our next one
Can
up,
you move
right?
to the Redwood
Elementary?
motion?
Oh, sorry, the motion.
I move to approve the closure of Redwood Elementary with boundary adjustments to Granger, Stansbury, and Wilson Elementary's schools to include the portion of Redwood to Granger Elementary to become a feeder from Granite Park to Valley Junior High as a first reading.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the closure of Redwood Elementary with the boundary adjustments to Granger, Stansbury, and Wilson Elementary Schools and to include the portion of Redwood to Granger Elementary to become a feeder from Granite Park to Valley Junior High. Is there any discussion on this?
Do you want to go?
Go ahead, you can go first.
I just want to make sure, can we go to the map of this? I feel like, though I'm sad to close Redwood, I feel really promising about what this could mean for our Redwood students and for our teachers as well. I feel really positive about what's going to happen here. I'm going to look at you guys and say it. I feel really positive about what's going to happen here. My concern, I'm concerned about those kids in the lower right quadrant that are going to go to Stansbury. Can we just talk about, can we just have a discussion about their safety?
Yeah, can I chime in here, Julie?
Yeah.
So I talked to Dave earlier because I actually went out this afternoon and I drove to the furthest corner of that quadrant.
Yeah, and I've been,
and Julie and I have talked about this today and our concerns. So I know this area well. This is actually the area I grew up just between 32 and 3600 West, north of Parkway Boulevard. You would never think there's a neighborhood there. There is. It's surrounded by industrial because apparently the builder went broke, and yeah. But that's where I grew up. And so this is, you know, Redwood Road was like part of my childhood, right? I remember going to before it was a swap meet, it was a drive-in. So I remember going there. So I'm familiar with this. And so I was really curious because I saw that it didn't qualify for busing. And I was like, this is the neighborhood that's just east of Maverick Center. And there's all those homes there. And so it took me a minute. I didn't know exactly where I was going once I got in the neighborhood. But I put that in my Google Maps, and I knew it was trying to take me to 35th and walk up and then over. And I was like, that could never be the safe walking route. So I knew to flip around. I'm driving through the neighborhood, noticing there's not a lot of sidewalks in that neighborhood, first of all. I noticed that. And then coming out of the neighborhood on 31, and then it's a left turn to get to the Decker Lake, the 2200 light, and then they're crossing all those tracks. And then we're putting kids up and over I-215, even though there is a pedestrian bridge there. And so I just drove that today really slowly. I probably irritated people around me, but I was trying to take so much in as I drove this. And while I appreciate, and I had Dave is so good. He tolerated my questions for like an hour today as I tried to push him on this, that, and the other. And I understand that from a transportation view, they're like, oh, that's a pedestrian bridge. It's safe. It's, it's a cement barrier from traffic and things like that. And I appreciate that. But that doesn't alleviate really my concerns about the walking route. I brought up bad weather. Mike, he's like, well, there's a sidewalk there, right? Of course there's. Who's shoveling it? And so I would still, and we don't have answers for that. I don't know if it's the city, is it the county, I don't know who plows 3100 South, but I can tell you with some confidence, I'm pretty sure that's gonna be at the bottom of the list when it snows for somebody to go out and shovel. And so I'm picturing a morning like this morning where those poor kids, if they're walking over a mile, they're gonna be so soggy and wet before they even get to school that they'll probably be pretty miserable that day. So this is really hard for me because I could see that Julie and I share concerns on that. On the other hand, you have this concept of it's not a reimbursable route. If it's not a reimbursable route for the state, we don't get paid for it. And so where I'm sitting as a board member is, okay, where does this money come from? That's something that we have to wrestle with up here. And in our conversations as we've, batted that around, I was going through different scenarios with Dave and, as far as transportation goes. And so this is challenging. If we open up and we pay for these routes, then are we paying for other routes too? So you can see how that path can kind of gain momentum. And then all of a sudden, the first route that we don't pay for, all of a sudden now we're picking and choosing favorites. So it just gets us in a place But that all being said, I'm not in love with kids walking that route either. So.
I would be willing, though, to vote in favor of the PAC's recommendation, knowing that we feel like we need an adequate plan here and that we are not sure that we feel this is an adequate plan. Knowing that, like, we need another answer for that or another plan for that come the second reading.
So a transportation plan? That's
Yeah.
more.
Will we call it a safe walking route? Because that could include a bus, but I think we need to know that we have a plan before we make the decision to move those guys, understanding that the plan is not a part of the vote because it could be changed by subsequent boards, right? And by subsequent, it's really an admin decision. It's not even a board, it's not a board decision. But I would want to know that we had something in place that we all felt comfortable with.
I have a question for you, Dave. Dr. Gaddy, sorry. So that portion that's up near the top that has the stars, that there is actually a population, how many is up there?
It's not a lot. I think it's 18 or 20, something like that.
But they qualify for busing, right?
They do, yeah.
Could that bus also swoop down and get some of those kiddos in that furthest corner to alleviate some of that?
If we want it reimbursed, we could stop on 31.
So
on a direct path to school. My fear is that we have room for all of the kids if we make the stop, because if we don't, now you're kind of picking, some do qualify and some don't. Does that kind of, so the way that the transportation law is written on reimbursement is we have to have at least 10 students that qualify to fund the bus in a regular education specific application. Once we have those 10 kids, we can have one stop directly on the path to school that is also funded. And so we could make a very viable argument that we're going straight to 31 over that bridge and in. That would require some kiddos that do ride to cross 31 to get onto the bus. And so that crossing would be inevitable if we're talking about funding.
Depending if there are too many students who are wanting to participate in that courtesy stop, could you please remind the board regarding the procedures for the lottery system for how we allow, or how do we determine
Well,
who gets
we've never done a
pass?
lottery in elementary. So that would be we would be applying a secondary system that was designed for secondary kids, but we could always try it. The one concern I would have about using a lottery system and say plucking off 60 of those kids and leaving 10 or 15, there's always more strength in numbers, right? So they talk about things when you're talking about safe walking routes, they call it the walking school bus, right? So the whole neighborhood walks together and now you have a gaggle of kids. And so there's safety in numbers, they're more visible. And
well, not only that, but we don't want to leave 10 kids.
That's what I'm talking
I mean,
about.
if we feel it's unsafe for one kid, every kid needs to be on the bus.
If I could just give you Steve will tell you that although it doesn't look like I get much exercise, I am quite the walker. And I have walked this exact path probably 25 times in the last 7 years. I go on about a 2.5 mile walk every day at work. And transportation base is right down on Parkway. I do recognize that I'm in a month going to be 50, which is very sad to realize, but I do realize I'm an adult and they're kids. But I've walked it in the winter, I've walked it in the fall, I've walked it in the spring, I've walked it at all times, and at no time was it ever a treacherous type of endeavor. So anecdotally, again, I've walked it. I can't argue with your perspective because that's your perspective, right? But I have walked it and I didn't find it to be terribly treacherous, and it doesn't match the state definition for funding. So,
board members, if I might, what we've heard is you would like us to develop alternatives for you to consider that include a fiscal impact note with them. We're happy to show you what a stop with a courtesy ride would do, pros and cons. We're happy to show you a more direct route that does pick up all students and tag a fiscal note to that. If we could have about 10 days to put that together and email that to you in consideration in advance of your December hearing, we're happy to do that. We understand what you're looking for, and we can run those models for you.
Perfect, thank you. That's
Do you have a
just
rough estimate now of how many kids, how many students would live in that quadrant there?
No, so when we did all of our analysis, we did it on all the things that qualify for state reimbursed transportation. So we can, it would take us not very long. We could
I
find
just
out.
wondered if you had it at your fingertips.
The hardship is when you look at the stars, is sometimes they're on top of each other because they're like in a communal living situation, like an apartment complex or something. So it looks like 3 stars, but it's like 45 kids. So we would have to just make sure that we GIS'd it.
That would be the number, though, if you go out to the other map, it would be the number that we increase Stansbury, wouldn't it, basically? Because it's pretty much that boundary, isn't it?
In all of that boundary, we forecasted or projected about 160 kids to 175 students from Redwood to Stansbury. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so I would assume since that's the area that we are proposing to go to Stansbury, that would be about 160 kids in that area, correct?
Somewhere in that area.
So if I interpret your concern,
They're increasing it.
if I interpret your concern correctly, is that once we provide transportation alternatives for the easternmost neighborhood, we need to consider all of those east of 215 in the analysis, correct?
Yeah, I think understanding both of it, either the whole 160 or if we just take that quadrant, that's the eastmost quadrant, the southeast quadrant, just understanding the difference.
Understood.
Okay.
We can break that down and see how many live where.
I'm okay, as a first reading, I'm okay supporting that motion, but I really do look forward to having that very broken down data prior to our final vote, and I think we all need to have a look at that before we vote. Yeah, next month.
I'm going to say I agree with that, and I appreciate you all bringing that concern up. That was my concern as well with this particular proposal. I just want to acknowledge again, I know that there have been a lot of parents from Redwood who've expressed their concerns and their feedback. I know there's a lot of them who probably wish they could be here tonight but didn't have the means to be here. And I want to acknowledge that. I have heard from teachers, from administration, from a lot of people affected by this proposal. And it pulls at my heartstrings, it really does. And as I was saying earlier, for the Orchard families, it's as if no matter what we do, what choice we make, because we have to do something, there's going to be families who are affected in a difficult way. And it's very hard to see, and it's not easy. But I do believe that the students in Redwood will be well served in the schools that they'll be moving to. I think the programs are strong. They'll go through some bumps. It'll take some time. But I really believe that they will be able to form a new community and look back and realize that benefits have been gained by this change. So I want to acknowledge, though, everybody's concerns. And again, no matter which way we turn, there will be families that are affected in some way. And so that's a hard decision to have to make. But I appreciate those who've had the voices willing to speak up. Yeah, thank you.
May I add one additional comment? I think there's a clear message here that we're concerned about some safety issues, and you have provided some different perspective on that, Dave, which we appreciate. I think there's also maybe something in addition to, or perhaps deeper than just the safety concerns. One of my concerns is that we make sure that we do everything to ensure that these students get to school, not just safely, but that they get to school. I think there are concerns in that regard, from whatever the circumstances may be or whatever extenuating issues families may have. I'm concerned as well that we're ensuring that these kids arrive at school. That could be a safety issue, but it can be also deeper and different than just safety issues. And making sure that we as a board, whether we have to provide additional busing or whatever the circumstances may be in that regard, that we're considering how best to get these students to school and home from school each and every day, if that makes sense.
If I can add to that, one of the things that is pretty clear to me is that we do have a group of, we have like teachers from Redwood who know these students very well. And as I've called and talked with the schools that are going to be receiving these Redwood kids, the first thing is that I want you to know I was very excited to see how excited the principals were to get these kids. They were all very, very excited. And I said, well, what if these kids come with needs that you don't know how to meet? And all three principals said to me, well, I'll have teachers there who know those kids. Thinking I'll have teachers from Redwood. And it made me feel more assured that our kids were going to be looked at as individuals and not like as a group on a map as we have to look at them because I don't know them individually, right? But that I have people who do know them individually who are going to make sure that their needs are met wherever they go. And so I think when we're talking about things like that, Clark, this is where that's the most important, is just frankly getting them to school and knowing how to get them to school, so.
All right, can you go back to the motion? So we've had a motion and a second on this with no further discussion. I will call for a vote. Those in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, the next one is adjustment from Walker and Wilson to Lincoln Elementary.
By the way, there's two parts to this one. This one first addresses the main boundary changes, and then the separate motion for the family shelter simply because of the timing of implementation.
I move to approve the boundary adjustment from Walker to Wilson and Lincoln Elementary Schools.
I'll second. We have a motion and a second to approve the boundary adjustment from Walker to Wilson and Lincoln Elementary Schools. Is there discussion on the motion? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Is this the second? This is the second part, okay.
I move to approve the boundary adjustment from Walker to Wilson, specifically the family shelter at the corner of 3500 South and I-15.
Sorry, that should be 3300 South. My apologies.
I move to approve the boundary adjustment from Walker to Wilson, specifically the family shelter at the corner of 3300 South and I-15 with boundary adjustments effective January 2025.
May I ask a clarifying question? That's based on the premise that it will be built, right? It's still up in the air. No, you don't think so?
No, I don't think it'll be open by January. When you say built, the hotel's there and it's mostly been remodeled to accommodate. It's a matter of funding. Once the funding is obtained through the state, then it's training for the staff.
Okay. So a better word to be, it's based on the assumption or the premise that it will be funded.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to approve the boundary adjustment from Walker to Wilson, specifically the family shelter at the corner of 3300 South and I-15, with boundary adjustments effective January 2025. Is there further discussion on this? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
I think I had 3500 South on the brain for a while now, so.
It's hard. Okay, so this is the one with Valley Crest Elementary adjustments. I'll entertain a motion. Go ahead.
I move to approve the closure of Valley Crest Elementary with boundary adjustments from Armstrong and Valley Crest to Monroe Elementary School, and to include a feeder pattern change from Westlake Junior and Granger High to Hunter Junior and Hunter High. As a first reading.
Right, we have a motion to approve the closure of Valley Crest Elementary with boundary adjustments from Armstrong and Valley Crest to Monroe Elementary School, and to include a feeder pattern change from Westlake Junior and Granger High to Hunter Junior and Hunter High School as a first reading. Any discussion on this?
I do have some questions, I guess. Just to make sure I understand the busing that you talked about. Basically, it's just a busing route for Hillsdale and Monroe students, correct?
The DLI part?
Yes, the DLI.
Is, yes, they'll stop at Hillsdale, and then we'll stop in the neighborhood around Monroe with a different bus. So one bus at each school, and if we need more buses, we'll figure them out. But then there is also a bus in the bottom southwest corner of the Monroe boundary for the Monroe regular education students that qualifies.
So this is buses we already have. You just added there, if we need more buses, we'll figure them out. I guess what I'm asking is, so we're saying no additional expense currently.
About $500 a year for just for the fuel.
A small amount, I apologize. But when you say if we need more buses, we'll figure them out, is that in the same kind of approach?
Yeah, so we would look for another 905 school that's in a proximity and see if we can find one. And if we can't, that's when we get into those more expensive amounts.
And then the option for adding other buses, which would require the purchase of 2 buses potentially,
Gets
that's only if the board decided we wanted additional routes.
Yes, correct.
Right.
But this centers on this whole idea of that mid-route, so instead of a bus driver sitting there waiting for the next pickup, they're actually on that
Yeah, there's a
mid-route.
finite number of those, though, to be clear. So that's not something where we just can keep doing them.
No. I'm just saying that's how this proposed cost
That's right.
stays so low currently.
Yeah, that's how we kind of figured out how we could do it and not make it cost a whole lot of money and still get all the kids there.
Which I appreciate the creativeness in coming up with those options. Are we confident that this is really the only expense that we see the district incurring if we create a magnet? That we won't be spending a whole lot more money to build that, we're not building anything, but, we're starting something new. It's not going to cost us
Right.
additional funds.
And again, it's basically, I know you've asked this question, and it's a fantastic question. Are there additional expenses to begin or start a magnet school? And maybe the question is begin or start versus just maintain. It's still a school. A lot of that depends on, how many students are there, but it still requires their principal and all the same basic staffing that we would. Could there be some startup marketing costs, perhaps? A lot of that was dependent upon transportation that we've discussed, but Superintendent, I don't know if you have anything to add in addition. We've talked about marketing costs perhaps, but I still don't see those as, quote, significant compared to the overall budget of maintaining a school every year.
Okay, and then is the busing short-term? Is it intended to be long-term? My question there relates to, for today, it makes sense that the Hillsdale and Monroe students would need to be picked up. 5 years from now, the question is going to be, why do we have this unfair busing system for the magnet school? So is that intended to be short-term till those students are through the program, or?
I don't know if we've discussed a specific time frame commitment for this, other than to say, I think a lot of that depends on how robust the school ends up being, how many students do come to the school. We anticipate recapturing some students that have not in Granite District anymore, how many of those students are coming from further west, and so on and so on. If there's any additional comments there, I don't know, but I think a lot depends on the growth or how many students we end up with at this magnet school.
The goal of the busing, in my mind, is to help offset the impact to families that have lost their school, the DLI program at their school. So I look at this as a short-term proposition, but overarchingly, we need to have a broader discussion about unfunded bus routes and transportation. We do have a couple of other routes throughout the district that are provided for gifted and ALC DLI programs to help provide especially impoverished families the opportunity to participate in those types of opportunities. So we'll be having that broader discussion in our next study session later this month. Is that next week? So with respect to that, that is in my mind, we're here to offset the impact for our current students, and then we would need to look at that in a few years from now and see what the benefits of continuing that service, changing it, altering it, enhancing it, or removing it.
Okay, because I guess my point in asking that question is I don't know that I would want to commit to a DLI program, magnet, if it's going to cost us additional funds.
Yeah.
Right, so if we think that down the road we plan to offer more buses and add more expense, it's probably a, not a pro for me, that's a con, right?
I would look at this too, if you don't mind me adding. We look at the Mill Creek closure. We made some assurances to that community to keep the commitment that we made with the DLI program. These are families that have committed to DLI, and we want to continue to support them through at least their family's journey through that program, because this is impacting them and it's totally outside of the bounds of their control. So that's kind of how I'm viewing the transportation piece, is providing that transportation short term. And I also look as an investment and opportunity to also potentially draw some of our students back. I call them our students because I think they belong in our schools, and I think they would be better served in our schools. So initially to draw some of those families back, but that's certainly a conversation the board needs to have as a whole.
I also would like to ask just about that sliver of Valley Crest boundary that was boundaried to Westlake. How difficult would it be to adjust the boundary? We're saying that the old Monroe boundary is boundaried to Westlake. Old Valley Crest, we're changing all to Hunter Junior. How hard would it be just to leave that part that was with Westlake?
I mean, not hard necessarily. It's just we lose the advantage of, especially at the high school, moving some students from Granger to Hunter, and then some of those from Westlake to Hunter Junior. I think the bigger loss would be for the high school students, but it's an impact both ways. Is it hard? It's that way now, and it's been that way for a while. But this has also been on our radar for a while to consider when we've been looking at Granger High.
Yeah, well, I know that this has been trying to alleviate some of the pressure on Granger High, and they're at 34, I don't know what, something really high. There are a lot of kids there, and so I know that we've had a lot of kind of leading up to this over the past few years is how can we alleviate a little bit of the pressure on Granger High?
Families want to go wherever they still can with the open.
Well, as long as there's room, and I guess the question is, would there be room at Granger? It sounds like that's what Mindy is expressing as a concern. Oh, was that you, Amy? Oh, sorry.
Would there still be room at Westlake and Granger? Westlake, I don't anticipate there being a capacity issue. I mean, this is their first year open, and they're not bursting at the seams. It's a beautiful, nice, large building. Granger.
But they only have 2 grades.
Right. They're going to add. But and then Granger High School, are they over capacity now? Yes. They have reloads for a while to show that. How much Principal Howell can work with perhaps some students that are currently there to remain will be up to him and the capacity of the building. But it's currently over capacity.
I'll speak to anecdotally. We just saw some data from your previous presentation that showed an increase of 17 students at Westlake this fall. I would also point out that they're managing a number of open enrollment permits as well because of that shiny new building. So there is capacity there, but we haven't seen an outsized amount of students clamoring to come to that facility like we still see at Granger High, frankly. Right. So I do feel like it is manageable.
But Granger High is the issue, so I guess I'm not really hearing from the board what would sound like support for amending the motion. Is that right?
I'm wondering why you, I guess I'm not unclear, sorry, Amy, what you feel strongly about why you don't want to move them. Is it just because they're already boundaried there and you don't want to just switch that? Is there a different reason?
Well, it was the STEM program, right? If I'm remembering your comments right. So a lot of those students are currently at Armstrong on the STEM track. And
So is it just the STEM kids, or is it that particular area? Like,
I think it's STEM and DLI. So they want to go to Westlake for the STEM program. And the DLI program at Westlake. They have a preference for that.
Both of those programs are at Westlake. The DLI program and the STEM
Right.
program are both at Westlake.
I mean, as discussed earlier, though, Hunter Jr. will take on the DLI students.
Siblings are already going or already there.
okay, thank you for the clarification. Sorry, I just was wondering, aside from, like, if there was a reason why that particular area specifically, I mean, obviously they were already planning on it. I would assume if they have siblings, they would be grandfathered in, which is generally what happens when you have a switch like this. But I didn't know if there was an additional concern on top of that, like.
Nothing additional from me. I'm just trying to address the concern
Okay,
from
just wondering.
Amy. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Is there any other discussion, questions, clerk? No? Okay.
I mean, I will just add, sorry, real quick. I personally have not been a fan of the magnet idea. One of my concerns was cost and the busing issue. I feel like if we, given how creative you've been on the busing options, I'm willing to go with it and try it out, but I really do have concerns about, keeping that long-term and then having that issue of, well, you don't have other busing options, why are you being unfair, right? And I would like us to address that as a board, and my preference would not be to add other buses, to make that clear. So,
Thanks. Which we will be, as indicated, we will be talking about that more in depth during our study session because it is a bigger problem. You're absolutely right. I, for one, going back to Julie's comments earlier, we have to start thinking outside the box. If we look at our population dropping, we have to start thinking outside the box. And talking to people, as I went out to this community, I did a couple events there, and, why are you taking your kid to Esperanza? Well, they have a DLI in kindergarten. Why are you taking your kid to this charter? And there's some of these things that if we're going to start, as Superintendent Horsley said, pulling some of these kids back, we have to start thinking outside the box. And I personally, just seeing, I've got 2 DLI schools in my area, one of which my kids attended as far as an elementary, and they're, as wonderful as those programs are, it poses a real problem for those schools as well as that population drops, which is what these schools, I think, are experiencing. It's really hard. And so I actually am excited to see if this works. I really am super excited to see if we can get this going, and maybe if this is a model that we can use other places. It's hard to do this type of thing, and I think this is we have a good solid plan to start, and I'm excited to see how this works. And I appreciate that you've gone through and found a way for us to provide that busing for those kids who are already in that DLI program, and to get them there without a huge additional expense to us. And thank you, that's incredible. I really am excited to see, because I think this is part of what we need to do as a district, to start thinking outside that box, to pulling some of those kids back, some of these kids to see what great programs we do have, and this is one that we could offer. So for my part, that's what I think that.
I do appreciate you bringing up the concern of the busing and the cost, Kim, because, that's on all of our minds. And so, whether it be kind of our question about Redwood or how long do we bus these DLI kids, I do feel like in the immediate future, we're taking that program away from a community that values it. And that's a little bit of a far drive crossing Bangor to get those kids there. I don't know if this is the right place to bring this up, but as far as like the solution that you guys have come up with for busing these DLI kids is great. I mean, I was elated when I saw that $500 price tag. I was like, oh, we can do this for $500. I think my comment here is more a broad spectrum. So I don't know if it's appropriate here, but somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. But I think we have to look at our overall process of these boundary studies. And so, the little snake thing that we always put up. And in July, we tout this, the July-August, we tout this, the recommendations come forward and the board approves them. And that's really where the rubber hits the road, right? School's starting back up. People are turning the page to the school year. We look at the boundary study. They're getting more narrowed. We're doing community meetings. So I guess my question is why couldn't we have figured out the answer to that busing before going out to the community and giving presentations that are very ambiguous, saying things like, hey, Hillsdale DLI families, we're gonna move your DLI program and it's up to the board if they wanna decide to have a bus or not. Where all along we could have put that slide up and said, hey, the board's going to provide busing for you, and it's only going to cost, they don't even need to know the cost. It's just the board. We've been able to strategize. We've been able to use the tools. So I guess my question is I think in a lot of ways, I feel like when these recommendations come out in July, August, they need to have that very fiscal component you're talking of, Dawn, as best as you guys can gather that to be part of the recommendation. Because if we're not in favor of the fiscal note attached to the recommendations, why are we even putting it out to the community? Because to go out to the community, it would have been a very different conversation at Hillsdale to say, hey, yeah, the bad news is the board's really looking at realigning this DLI and you might lose the DLI program in your school. But hey, the good news is for those families who love that program enough and want to continue down that path, we have a bus for you. Well, those are two different conversations. It puts the board in two different lights. It puts the community at ease right from the get-go. And so instead of having this ambiguity out there of you might get a bus or you might, nobody wants to hear that. And so I'm just thinking, can we rethink broad spectrum our process to maybe get a little bit more data up front as part of that early recommendation prior to going out to the community and giving those presentations? Because let's face it, like Kim, you said you're not really in favor of busing. Well, if we had known the busing, at least a range of the busing costs back in July and August, you may have not supported this in the first place, right? So that's the kind of stuff I'm getting at. And that's not really directed like daggers to you, both of you. I'm thinking this is a PAC. And I know there's a lot of people on PAC. So I just would like us to examine that process, because if there's information we can get earlier as board members before going out to communities, and then we can actually speak the real truth to communities. Here's what we're offering. Here's the recommendation. Here's what it entails. Here's what it does not entail. There's no ambiguity. Then we become a trust, then the trust builds because we're actually transparent. We're telling them the good news, but we're also brave enough to tell them the bad. That's how you build trust with the community. And so I think we've got some work to do to look at a little bit more introspectively on PAC and how can we come up with more specific, defined recommendations along with their fiscal implications prior to asking for board approval. So that's, I'll get off my soapbox now. Okay.
Thanks. I will say this, Karen, I've had some other board members also reach out with some concerns, not necessarily specifically like you guys did anything wrong, but just things that, as we're going through this, we're like, oh, it would be nice to know this, it would be nice to know that. And I think, so please look for an email. I do plan on sending that out.
Ways we can make it easier on you guys.
Yeah, so that we're not constantly asking questions. If we have them up front, and this is one of them, that we have a fiscal note attached to it from in the future. So we will go ahead and do that.
Could I speak to that?
Sure.
I appreciate that, and I actually think that's a really wise suggestion this is a little bit of a unique and complex, I think this is probably the most complex PAC study we've done. There's so many different moving parts. When Steve and I envisioned this process a while back and we started putting some things together and trying to enhance community engagement, I mean, we were kind of building a plane midair to some degree and starting to land that plane a little bit more smoothly every year. We get better at this process, and I think that's a wise suggestion. That's just not something that has come up before. And after the fact, you're like, well, duh. We should have done that. That's a good idea. And I think we can take that feedback and be reflective on how we can always improve. So thank you for that suggestion.
All right, so we've had a motion and a second to, in regards to closing Valley Crest Elementary with the boundary adjustments to Armstrong and Monroe schools. That's the motion that we're on, correct? Okay. So.
There's one more.
We have not done this one. I moved the.
Wait. We haven't voted on the other one.
We haven't voted on that one yet. Sorry, I went off the rails a little bit.
This is the one that I moved.
Okay, This is the one that's on the floor. So if there's no further discussion on this one, we'll go ahead and vote.
I just made his paycheck right there.
I knew we hadn't voted on this.
Me too.
Okay, so without any further discussion, we'll go ahead and vote on this. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. And now we can move on.
Well, I want to say that actually on motion number 4, I never said for a first reading, but I meant it to be.
That is correct. So Stacy,
So,
could you please
if you could
correct that in the
amend that
minutes that
note-
we, on
minutes.
these ones, these are all first readings.
Parentheses, she meant as a first reading.
Say it.
The legislative auditor will have no problem.
Okay. All right, so this one is then now that we have closed Valley Crest, we are proposing to open a DLI Spanish magnet school at the current Valley Crest campus.
Well, close it for a first reading.
As a first reading.
I move to approve the school opening of a DLI Spanish magnet school at the current Valley Crest campus as a first reading.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the school opening of a DLI Spanish magnet school at the current Valley Crest campus as a first reading. Is there any further discussion on this? All right, seeing none, we will go ahead and vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, did we get through everything?
I believe so.
Thank you, entire PAC.
Okay,
And the
I think we got it.
Thanks for
Thank
all
you,
your hard work.
board. Sincere
Dr.
thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for, this was a lot. This was a lot, and we appreciate and acknowledge that this was a lot for you guys. Thank you for all the work you've done on this.
Thanks, Dave. Save Dave.
Yep.
Thanks, Dave. You're excused.
I'll be at transportation at 5:45 in the morning,
Yeah, no
sending all of you
kidding.
texts so that you wake up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dave.
All right, we're going to invite Doug Larson to come up, and we have 2 first readings and 1 second reading on policy.
Board members, thank you. I hope you've got enough gas in the tank. I'm running on caffeine from my Diet Coke, so I'm in good shape. I do have 3 policies to talk to you about tonight. The first 2 policies are first readings. And we talked about these policies in law and policy. The first one is Article 8A27. This is naming district properties, approving mascots, and permanent artwork. So this policy, did I say that right? Naming district properties and approving mascots, monuments, and permanent artwork. There are times when when principals or communities make requests for changes or embellishments to facilities or the identity of a school, and we decided that we needed to have a better process for making those determinations. This policy provides a basis for making such decisions, and we have provided also a memorandum, which is Memorandum 145, which outlines that process very carefully. For any of these types of decisions, kind of based on the gravity of those decisions or the scope of those decisions, we've assigned them to an appropriate process. If you have any questions about this policy, I'd be happy to respond. I'd also be happy to discuss more about Memorandum 145 if you have questions about that.
Any questions? All right, I will entertain a motion if there's no questions.
I move that we approve Article 8A27, naming district properties and approving mascots, monuments, and permanent artwork.
As a first reading?
As a first reading.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve Article 8A27, naming district properties and approving mascots, monuments, and permanent artwork as a first reading. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes.
Great. The next policy to present for first reading, Article 5A2. This policy is a prohibition of dangerous materials on district property. We've had this policy in place for many years and without many changes. But we did have HB 84 that was passed last legislative session. And while the district wants to continue to regulate dangerous materials, including firearms, on district properties, district also understands that some exceptions are called for, particularly in the instances where individuals are concealed carry permit holders. And now under HB 84, if individuals, including employees, have been through the Educator Protector program and therefore have a right to maintain a weapon on campus. Of course, HB 84 also allows, and this policy will allow for something that's new, if an employee has received appropriate training, they would be allowed to have a biometric safe in which they would be able to keep a firearm instead of being required to maintain it on their person throughout the day. But those are the only real changes to the policy. I'm happy to answer any further questions if you have them.
Any questions? Okay.
Do you want a motion?
I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve Article 5A2, prohibition of dangerous materials on district property as a first reading.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve Article 5A2, prohibition of dangerous materials on district property as a first reading. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Moving on to our second reading.
We have one second reading, and this second reading is Article 10C3, Educator and Student Communications and Social Media. We discussed this policy last month. There were no revisions suggested by the board, and we have had this policy, or had a discussion about this policy in law and policy for 2 months as well. If you'll recall, we added a paragraph to our longstanding policy on social media and student communications pursuant to Senate Bill 92, which was passed last session. And this bill required us, if we were going to have communications with students via electronic means, that we also had to have communication with students via an analog mean or some other means, so that a student wouldn't be required to have a telephone or some other device in order to receive communications. We've added that paragraph to the policy. And if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to respond.
All right, no questions? I will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve Article 10C3. Is that what I should be saying?
Yep.
10C3. Educator and student communications through social media for a second reading.
Second and final?
And final reading.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve Article 10C3, Educator and Student Communications through Social Media as a second and final reading. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we will take a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Larson.
Thank you, board.
Turn the time over to Superintendent Horsley for his board report.
I had a couple items I wanted to cover, but in light of the lateness of the hour and the fact that somebody owes me Chick-fil-A for being here this late, I think it might be you. That's for a whole other reason. Today is 104 days of, who's counting though, of being superintendent. I just want to let you know we're having some great experiences out in our schools. I regret that Kelly left. I wanted to give her a little bit of shout out. I spent some time in a lot of our special needs classes, particularly our kindergarten EE class, where I got to spend time putting eyes on a spider for Halloween, learning fine motor skills. So that was very enjoyable. I wanted to give a shout out to Cheyenne, who's a nutrition worker at Wright Elementary. She touched my heart, how much she was appreciative of that I would spend time with her. And I just am grateful for all of our ESPs and have had an opportunity to visit with a number of them. And I think they're just as dedicated as our wonderful teachers and our administrators to the improvement of our education and the opportunities that we're providing our students. And just a shout out to those individuals. There's a lot of work going on with our DISC, or as we're calling it right now, the committee formerly known as DISC. For those of you who don't know, DISC is the District Improvement Steering Committee, and it has served us well as a focal point of measuring our progress along our strategic plan. And now we're enhancing that committee, and we have a new name proposed. And I'm going to pull that up here. Mitch. Okay, here it is. The Student Jedi Council. The Student Journey to Excellence and Development Instruction Council. I don't know who came up with that, but we're still working on that. The opportunity comes to enhance how we provide services to our schools. And when we see needs and challenges, is the district responsive with resources that might be a little more intensive? And especially as we look at some of the challenges some of our schools are facing, I want them to be able to look, I want a principal to be able to say, we're having this challenge and difficulty, and a SLID to be able to say, I'm going to take this to the Jedi Council, and that immediately we can respond and say, we have a professional development for this. We're going to come out and monitor this. Special education is going to come out and provide this. We're going to reset this classroom and their expectations, and really support the heck out of our schools. We exist as a district to support our schools and our students. And our teachers need that help and support. Our administrators need that help and support. So I'm appreciative of all our district staff kind of taking that vision and starting to wrap their minds around it and offer up helpful suggestions about how we could be more focused on improving instruction and providing that support. I want to give a shout out to Mitch, our chief of staff. He has created 3 committees, and they're working focused on the respective grade levels, and we're getting some great, those are also working as part of our Student Jedi Council, and we're having that collaboration with our district directors has been very powerful. And I think seeing those principals having their voice amplified through that representation with that group is helping us make better decisions. That's the goal. That we're not a top-down organization. We're a collaborative organization, and we're here to support our schools. And they have come up with some incredible suggestions and ideas. One of those is a math facts contest. And as we look at improving literacy in K through 3 and improving our math facts, this is a great suggestion, and we're going to look to pilot that in January with school-level competitions, moving on to a network-level competition and a district championship on math facts. Giving our kids some competition and opportunities to incentivize adopting something that we know will help them in the foundational experience of their education. Last but not least, Daniel. Got to sit down with Daniel today at one of our schools. I've been job shadowing some of our literacy coaches and seeing the great work that they're doing, and they are inspiring. This was a kindergarten class in one of our impoverished schools, and the kids were learning the letter O and how to sound that out, and the instructional coach was there. The teacher was amazing, and Daniel corrected me several times on my process and procedures. We were learning the word nod, as in nod your head, and the teacher asked for an example of how to use that word, and he says, it's like when you're naughty, Santa will not come. And you know what, Daniel? You're right. You are absolutely right. He also, she taught them an excellent skill when they see the D or the B. As you can imagine, kindergartners might mix up those letters on occasion. So they will put up their letter B and check it. And I started doing the D, but they don't know that part yet. And so that's where he was correcting me. He's like, no, you need to use just this arm. If it doesn't match, then it's a D. Okay, Daniel. Thank you for your help, Daniel. Having a great time. We're seeing some great things in our site visits, and I'm just grateful for the opportunity to work and serve with you all.
Superintendent. Julie, since we've been going this way all night.
I have nothing to report.
Easy enough. Just a quick report on Community Council meeting that happened on October 29th at Kearns Junior. There were some new faces there from our new council members. This is our first meeting of the year. Some stalwart returning members there as well. Mitch presented on Utah's accountability model. Sorry, I'm speaking quickly. Accountability model and school student achievement rates. I thought there was some pretty good discussion on MGP and how it works, and Mitch even put together a great video explaining it all. It wasn't your voice on the video though, so.
I just put the words in E.
Okay.
Somebody scaled the voice talent to do that.
Okay, so yeah, it was very professional video. And great discussion on, talking about the fact that HB 212 teacher bonus is about 62% funded by the district. I think it was good information for them to hear. Lots of performance data shown, lots of questions and discussion from the community council members. So I think it was a great meeting to start the year. I did have to leave slightly early, so if Nicole or Chris, if you had anything else to add to that, please feel free.
They did have some Q&A, but other than that, had some opportunity, but they stuck mostly to that.
Nicole, I did have a USBA thing to report, actually. Can I come back?
What? Okay,
Come
Kim,
back to me.
is that all you had, Kim? Go ahead, Julie.
Just, I want you to know that one of the results from Legislator Day in the classroom was realizing that our legislators don't often know what is going on with education funding and things like vocabulary with education. So I'm working with Luke and Ben and, what's her name, Todd, to, I was like, I know, yeah, there it is. To put together a little video that goes through what funding looks like in Granite that we're going to share with our legislators. And then we're going to invite them to come in to have a more in-depth conversation to kind of meet their individual needs and answer their individual questions. So just so you know that we're working on that. A little bit part of my USBA role.
Thanks, Julie. Connie, did you have anything?
Not really, other than to zap the ZAP tax passed. And so Parks and Rec are also, I don't know if they're leaders, but they join in to see how the funding goes. Todd, do you know if schools can get involved with the ZAP tax?
I don't know that we're a qualified entity to participate
what
because
I
it's a
was
sales tax and we don't usually participate in sales tax.
Okay, because, the city's drama departments get it, and it's real broad, but they'll be taking applications as well as getting the money out to the people in the next year, couple of years. That's all.
Thanks, Connie. Chris?
We did not have a budget meeting today because we knew this meeting would go long. So we have nothing to report for budget right now.
Karen?
I had a benefits meeting yesterday. Just a couple little tidbits. We had 200 employees completely miss open enrollment. So they have to pay a late fee. That's not that they can't enroll. It just means that's on them. So that we had a brief discussion. That's actually pretty high in compared to years past. And so obviously our benefit package is pretty important to us and to our employees. And so we want to make sure that they get set up. As far as where we are, we've got an 85.1% loss ratio on medical, which really just means we're doing pretty dang good on medical. We're 8% better than where we were at this point last year. So for medical, we're looking pretty good. Final quarter's pretty expensive. People have hit their maxes and then they go in and have a lot of procedures done in the fourth quarter. So we still got to let that play out. We are keeping a close eye on pharmacy. Pharmacy costs are rising quickly. I also found out that mental health is now our #1 diagnostic category, which is good in the sense that people are utilizing that resource and getting help before they get to the inpatient phase of things. So you can look at that. And we had a brief discussion yesterday in the meeting, and that doesn't surprise us all with the pressures on us. And we all have stresses in our job. I think everybody does. Education's no exception. And then just, I think, we've got inflation. There's just a lot of pressures adding on everybody's shoulders. And so you can look at that as a negative. We actually looked at it as a very positive, that people are tapping into that. Because there's been a lot of discussion on how do we let our employees know what resources are out there to get, medicine, counseling, therapy, whatever is needed for them to, even crisis care, at times when they're in trouble. So anyway, that is my brief report.
I will defer my time.
Thanks, Clark. Just really briefly, look for Stacy to send an email to you regarding NSBA and your plans ongoing. It is the first weekend in April, I believe. So please check your schedules and let her know as soon as possible. I did give you a brief update on the calendar committee. Just so you are aware, I did ask for them to send me the calendars, the 2 proposed calendars, so that I can forward those on to you, and then you can have them for a little bit longer to look at. We will be reviewing that in December, so please take a look at those. It was very interesting, the way that the survey came out, and you won't be able to have that survey data until December, but we tried to come up with 2 very different calendars, because that's always been the complaint that I think we've heard in the past, is that these are very similar, and so we did, and it was my goal. No, I won't say that. Okay. Anyway, please take a look at those. And if you have questions, give me a call. I'm happy to tell you what we talked about there. But we'll look for that to be coming in December. And with that is all we have. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn. Second.
All right, Stacy, you can decide who made that motion. All right, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, please say